Family and fiancé pressured me to reconcile with my dad, who left for his new family, but I refuse. Now I'm left feeling isolated. When I was 13, my father had an affair, left my mother and moved in with his affair partner, whom we will call Janet. My sister and I used to see him every weekend, and I have to confess that he was a decent father, but I never liked Janet. When Janet became pregnant and they had a son, our visits became less frequent, and my father became more worried about his new family. He missed some of my performances and my sister's competitions because he was preoccupied with his son. Janet chose to relocate when I was 16 years old in search of a better job. My sister and I begged him not to leave, but Dad simply responded, "I need to prioritize my family." He moved 10 hours away, which effectively destroyed our relationship. I decided to maintain no contact because it was evident he did not consider me family. My younger sister remained in contact with him. He would try to call and invite me to visit my sister, but I refused. When he returned to see my sister, I refused to talk to him when he arrived at the house. I did not invite him to my high school or college graduation. I'm now 33 and have had no touch with him. He has tried to contact me several times over the years, and his family has reached out on his behalf. I've avoided family gatherings in case he attends, such as my sister's wedding and baby showers. My father and his family returned to our hometown 3 months ago, and he has been tireless in his efforts to reconcile. My half-brother and sister have both expressed interest in a relationship with him, stating that he is an excellent father. My father found out I'm getting married and has been attempting to contact me, even speaking with my fiancé. Janet messaged me, stating I had continually broken my father's heart, that I am sad, and that I should get therapy. I reacted, calling her a expletive, and then blocked her. Everyone seems to be urging me to accept him back into my life. I'm weary of being harassed and unintentionally running into my father and his family in town. Whenever I see them, I simply walk away and refuse to speak. People keep telling me he's a decent father who did his best to stay in touch, but I pushed him away. The pressure is immense. My mother, sister, grandparents, aunts, uncles, and even some friends all insist that I reconcile. Even my fiancé has begun to question my decision to exclude him. Update 1. I recently chatted with my fiancé and regrettably things didn't go well. I've had enough and want to run away. My fiancé, whom I will refer to as Larry, is aware of my background with my father and Janet. I stated that his siding with my father and pressing me was harming me, and that as my fiancé, he should be supporting me. Larry informed me that he cannot support me in doing anything that he believes is bad. He said he spoke with my father, heard all sides of the story, and believes we can resolve things if we sit down and chat. I told Larry I didn't want to communicate with my father and asked why he was talking to him. Larry revealed that his father, who is acquainted with my father, pushed him to contact him. He then informed me that my father adores me and has always wanted to be a part of my life. He even has images of me, which I believe he obtained from family because my social media is private. Larry stated that my father is heartbroken over our estrangement and that I was unfair in asking him to move away when I was young. He also claimed that I started off on the wrong foot with Janet and that I was not to blame for the relationship's failure. Finally, he informed me that everyone can see the truth except me, and that I should look in the mirror since I am the problem. Needless to say, I burst out crying and asked him why he was doing this to me and not supporting me. Larry claims to love me, but he won't stand by and let me be a cruel expletive. After he said this, I stood up, told him that he shouldn't marry a cruel expletive, and left. I am currently sitting in my car and my phone is blowing up with Larry attempting to call me, but I do not want to speak with him. I feel as if I'm losing everything and everyone, and I have no idea what's happening. Update 2. I know many of you are encouraging me to break off all contact with my family and leave town, but it is not an option for me financially. I wouldn't be able to start my business somewhere because I've invested all of my money in it and have only recently generated a consistent revenue. Relocating is not viable. I adore my friends and family and don't want to cut them off. I grew up in this town, and I'm not ready to leave. I did not intend to write another report so quickly, but a lot has transpired today. First, I agreed to meet with my father to discuss and persuade him to back off and leave me alone. I requested my mother to arrange it for him and no one else. I wasn't sure he'd agree, but within 15 minutes of her calling, he was at the door. I requested my mother to stay and mediate. To paraphrase the talk, my father is in therapy and invites me to join him for family sessions. He wants me to spend one-on-one time with him, to stop being harsh and mean to his children, and to believe in them. He also demanded that I stop trash-talking Janet and invite him and his family to my wedding, including asking him to walk me down the aisle. I, on the other hand, want him to quit talking to my friends and asking others to speak for him. I want him to keep Janet away from me totally, and I agreed to be courteous at events and around town as long as he does not try to hug or chat to me. My mother reminded him that he was being unrealistic about some of his desires, particularly those involving Janet and his other children. For the time being, we've agreed that I'll attend 3 therapy sessions with him as he schedules them. My mother also believes I require individual therapy. He will cease interfering with my life and relationships, keep Janet away from me and ask his children to give me room. I will be courteous with him in public as long as he respects my personal space and does not approach or press me. I still haven't spoken to my fiancé. He arrived at my mother's house, but she refused to let him inside. He keeps blowing up my phone, as do his family and friends, and telling me to listen to him. During my meeting with my father, I discovered that he had paid for the majority of the vendors and services for my impending wedding, and they have been on speaking terms for far longer than I had anticipated. Larry had told me that his family paid for these items and I believed him. I feel betrayed by him, and I no longer trust him. I know I'll have to talk to him someday, but I don't feel ready yet. Update 3. First and foremost, the contract with my father is off the table. He couldn't even go a week without crossing my limits, thus there will be no therapy sessions with him, and I will maintain no contact. After deciding on a course of action, keeping Janet away from me, asking his kids to back off, and respecting my personal space, it only lasted 3 days. Everyone looked pleased that I had forgiven my father and told me so. My sister was thrilled that I was willing to give him a chance, and under duress, I agreed to have dinner with just her and my father. When my sister and I arrived at the restaurant to meet our father, he wasn't alone. He had invited Janet, my grandparents, his son, and daughter. He stood up and attempted to hug me. I immediately grew agitated, wondering why they were there. My father informed me that if we wanted to mend our relationship, I needed to embrace Janet and my younger siblings. I tried to leave after telling him that he had broken our agreement and that he should never contact me again. He wouldn't let me go and took hold of me. When I say all hell broke loose, I really mean it. I began shouting at them, and my father, Janet, and grandparents attempted to gaslight me and persuade me to sit down. When that didn't work, things became heated, resulting in a shouting battle. My father and Janet said many horrible things, including comments about my appearance and dubbing me a psychopath. My half-brother left the restaurant and my half-sister began to cry. My sister astonished me by defending me and accusing my father of wrecking things after I had finally given him a chance. She even slapped Janet. My sister took me out of there and apologized to me. I believe this was the first time she had witnessed Janet's interactions with me and how she handled me. She kept repeating she couldn't understand how Dad had spent years professing he would do anything to get me back, only to sabotage the relationship when he finally had the opportunity to re-establish it. My father has tried to contact me, but I have blocked him and refused to speak to him. I also refuse to speak with my grandparents. My father has tried to get my mother and sister to talk with me, but I believe he has burned his bridges with them. The conflict in the restaurant has spread and some people appear to be backing off. As I already stated, what my father and Janet said to me was inexcusable, and because we live in a tiny town, it spread quickly. Hopefully, individuals will back down, and those that continue to support them will be forced out of my life. My sister is very unhappy with my father and Janet and she refuses to speak to them. She blames them for my continued lack of communication. She is not allowing them to see her children either. I'm not sure if my sister will reconcile, but she is furious right now. My mother is also furious, and she appears to have had a few choice words with my father and Janet. She has agreed not to force me again to communicate with him. I'm going to start individual treatment since I believe I really need it. I feel awful for my half-siblings because they have done nothing wrong. I may be willing to have a distant relationship with them in the future, but I'm not ready yet, and I'm not sure I ever will be. I did send them a note on Facebook to apologize and assure them that they had not done anything wrong. Finally, to inform you all on my fiancé. I chatted with him yesterday about everything. I'd been radio silent since walking out on him. Essentially, he was pressured by his father to speak with my father and was offered a sob story about a misunderstood parent who really wanted to be involved in his daughter's life. Larry was unhappy with me for refusing to attend his family functions and for leaving his mother's birthday party when I realized my father and Janet were present. He was under pressure from his family to not disrupt their activities, and all he wanted was for everyone to be happy and get along, clearly at my price. Larry said that my father had paid for some of the wedding suppliers, but he didn't realize it until after the event was over. His father had informed Larry that he and his mother had paid for everything. My father had informed Larry that it was his way of giving. Larry also revealed that my father had instructed him to speak to me on his behalf. I informed Larry that he had abused my confidence and I couldn't imagine marrying someone who didn't support me. He came down in tears and apologized to me, promising never to do it again. Larry was upset and asked for another opportunity. To all of you who expected me to end our relationship, I apologize for disappointing you, but we will try to work things out. Aside from this incident, he has been the ideal partner, and I sincerely believe he was duped by his family and my father. Larry has sworn to stand up to his family and have no contact with my father. I'm still living with my mother because I need space, which I won't have if I move back home. We will contact our wedding vendors next week to discuss our alternatives. Larry begs for a postponement rather than canceling the wedding completely. We may still break up because actions speak louder than words, and I want to see if he can rebuild what we had and demonstrate that I can trust and rely on him. My father has been attempting to reach me, but I've blocked him. Larry has sworn to stand up to his family and have no contact with my father. There's no point in changing my phone number because I've done it before and my father always gets to acquire it again. Larry is open to the possibility of ending their relationship. I'm giving him an opportunity to show me that he means what he says. I always felt I had a good relationship with Larry's family, but I was definitely mistaken. I'm not asking him to have no contact with them, that is up to him, but I will absolutely separate myself from them. Any additional occurrences will result in no contact. If we are still together and have children, I will not trust his family with them. Update 4. I've cancelled the wedding. I was able to receive some returns, but I lost some money. Larry begged me not to cancel the wedding, but I couldn't marry him after what he'd done. I was determined to give him another chance, and he promised me he would maintain low contact and stand up to his parents, issuing an ultimatum that we would not allow any communication with my father and Janet. He agreed that we would not attend any gathering or party to which they were invited, and that we would not allow any attempts to force contact with my father. Larry met with his family to explain the situation, but when he returned from the discussion, he was agitated and appeared to have changed his mind. He tried to persuade me that his family only meant good and that he couldn't avoid touch with them because he loves them. He also stated that he couldn't control their friendships and tried to reassure me that it wouldn't be an issue in the future. He claimed his father would speak with my father and ensure he acted appropriately in my presence. As soon as I heard this, I started thinking about the remarks I'd read. The primary one is that if we had children, Larry might take them to his family, which includes my father and Janet, and I would have no control over it. At that point, I understood I couldn't trust Larry and would never be able to. I broke up with him. Larry isn't taking it well and constantly begging me to accept him back, swearing he won't contact his family. His family and friends are pleading with me not to stop the relationship, but he has made his decision and demonstrated to me that he lacks courage. I do not need him in my life. In reference to my father, I am considering obtaining a restraining order. Given what transpired at the restaurant, I may be able to, but I'm not sure yet. My acquaintance is assisting me in investigating the matter. My father has kept a low profile since last week, with the exception of a few attempts to apologize, and I haven't heard anything from him. My sister still refuses to speak with my father or Janet. Unlike me, my sister is very confrontational and has attacked them on social media about what happened at the restaurant and other earlier events that I was unaware of. When my sister and Janet ran into each other in town, they had a very public yelling match, with Janet demanding that my sister remove her posts. It concluded with Janet assaulting my sister. My father reportedly sided with Janet in this, and now my sister despises Janet and refuses to speak with our father, who is also attempting to reach her. My father's and Janet's reputation appears to have suffered as a result of the restaurant event, my sister's battle with Janet, and several Facebook posts about them. Individuals are gossiping, which has worked well for me since some individuals have backed down, which I am pleased about. Unfortunately, a few people continue to support him, including my ex's parents. There hasn't been much news about my half-siblings recently. I've located a therapist, but there's a bit of a waiting list before I can begin therapy. I'm still living with my mother, who is completely supportive, and I've found a cat that I'll pick up next week. Update 5. I'm still at my mother's house and I've got my tiny kitten. I named her Sasha, and she is the loveliest thing, yet quite lively. I'll try to take pictures for people who request them, but she won't stay still long enough for a decent shot. I already love her, and my mother continues to be my rock. I'm still waiting for treatment, but I'm finding Reddit beneficial and therapeutic, And the majority of the people here have been quite kind and helped me see things more clearly. So many thanks to everyone. As for my ex, now that we've split up, I feel lighter and more free. Being away from him has made me realize all of the red lights in our relationship that I was previously unaware of, and I feel like I escaped unharmed. Luke, who is using real names because my blogs were discovered, is not dealing well with the separation and has taken over my father's role in continually disturbing me. If you read this, Luke, we're done, and I won't change my mind. So stop phoning me, coming to my house, or sending me flowers. I'm moving on, and you should too. My sister, Emma, is still on my side and has moved on from Janet, the step-monster. My sister informed everyone about Janet's affairs and they are no longer communicating. Janet is still trying to preserve face, claiming my sister is lying and telling everyone that we are the worst and have treated her terribly throughout the years, attempting to ruin her marriage. I don't think anyone believes what she is saying. Janet has sent hateful mails to both myself and my sister. When we ran into her, she yelled at us and threatened us. My sister's car has been keyed and my store windows have been broken. Unfortunately, we can't prove anything, but she's the most likely suspect. My half-siblings are undoubtedly my father's children. They were tested years ago when she was a baby. According to what I've heard, they're not speaking with Janet at all. My father seemed to have grown a spine and kicked Janet out. She is currently living with her parents, according to what I've heard, and he is considering divorce. I haven't spoken with my father since he apologized for everything in a text message. Regarding a restraining order, I'm more concerned with obtaining one against Janet at this time. I have cameras, but you can't tell if it's her due to the angle. I'm getting fitted for better covering. The damage is already done. My father had a chance to make things right with me, but he squandered it. I just want to be alone and get on with my life. Update 6. My father and Janet are still together. They split up for a period but are now back together and maintaining a united face, despite the fact that she is a cheater. Apparently, they tried again for the sake of their children. Strangely enough, my father and I are in a better place. We text periodically and are friendly when we see each other. He has ceased pushing for a relationship and is now respecting my space. We can now be in the same room without generating a commotion, and we've even had the occasional coffee together, which to be honest, is all I ever wanted. He even provided me with my education fund without any restrictions attached. My step-siblings and I have begun to communicate and follow each other on social media. My stepsister occasionally comes to my workplace to assist. I knew they were not to blame, and I was being unjust to them. They are still furious with their mother, but they have to live with her. They're giving her the quiet treatment, as far as I can tell. I still despise Janet, but at least she isn't bothering me. Unfortunately, I was unable to obtain a restraining order against her owing to a lack of proof. I avoid and do not speak to her, and I believe my father has warned her. My sister is conversing with our father again, but she despises Janet and would not have anything to do with her. She goes out of her way to exclude Janet from everything she can, and my sister and I have become closer. As for Larry, we are not and will never be back together. He hasn't entirely accepted it, but things have settled down and I'm no longer hounded as much. He still wants to get back together, but I am not interested. His friends and family will come to accept this. He believes that because things are better between my father and me, I would soften and forgive him, but I can't trust him. As for me, I've started treatment and am working through my issues. I've recognized that my relationship with my father was not entirely his fault, and I share some of the guilt. I spent my life behaving as if he had abandoned me while in reality I had pushed him away. My business is doing great, so I'm just focused on myself right now. Husband wet the bed, threw a tantrum and is now refusing to speak to me after I told our daughter the truth. I'm feeling confused and isolated. This morning, I, 28F, woke up because the sheets I was sleeping on were damp. I believed our 6-year-old daughter had been in an accident, but to my amazement, it was not her. My husband had wet the bed. After showering, I woke him up and informed him what had happened. He initially denied it, but eventually acknowledged he had peed the bed. He sprang out of bed, horrified, and began ripping off the blankets. Because our kid was still asleep on the opposite side, he couldn't get them off, which I found amusing. He became angry and told me it wasn't amusing, so I stopped. The only thing his yanking off the sheets did was wake up our daughter, who was perplexed and inquired what was going on. He didn't say anything and kept fumbling with the sheets. When he didn't respond, I informed her that he had wet the bed. He froze and gave me an odd expression, like if he was about to cry or something. Our daughter inquired why he had soiled the bed, and because he was still silent, I calmly explained that accidents do happen. He just stood there, staring at me with a lethal expression. I am not exaggerating when I say he looked at me with utter hatred. I've never been terrified of him, but for a moment, I thought he was going to hit me. Then he dropped the bedding on the floor, exited the room and locked himself in the bathroom for nearly 45 minutes. When he came out, he quickly changed and went, saying, "You can take her to school." He did not even look at me. I was annoyed by his behavior, but I let it go since I didn't want to dispute with him when he was in such a foul attitude. However, when I returned home from work, he was still brooding and ignored me. I was still annoyed by his conduct, so I told him to get over it. That wetting the bed wasn't the end of the world, and stop taking it out on me. At this point, he accused me of humiliating him in front of our daughter. I thought that claim completely ludicrous on so many levels, so I furiously reminded him that he disgraced himself by wetting the bed, not I. He did not take it well, shouted at me and walked off to his computer. Now he won't talk to me, and I'm bewildered. I believe he was the one who acted inappropriately and immaturely, and I do not believe I did anything wrong. Maybe my last comment was harsh, but I believe he deserved it. Still, I'm wondering if I was too mean. Edit 1. I simply wanted to clarify that I did not advise our daughter to be mean or disgrace my husband. I informed her since I didn't know what else to say and it was very evident what had occurred. I felt it was best to be honest. I didn't say it in a humiliating way, but rather casually and without making a huge issue about it. I didn't expect my hubby to feel this horrible about it. Edit 2. For whatever reason, someone shared a link to a claim about my husband having cancer, which is false. Neither my husband nor I have cancer. Update 1. I reviewed my original post and realized that I needed to elaborate before providing an update. I felt empathy and cared for my hubby. I spoke gently to him after waking him up. However, his reaction caught me off guard and it couldn't have taken more than a minute for him to hop out of bed and lock himself in the bathroom. After that, I thought it was best to leave him alone. I realize I was wrong for informing our child, but I didn't do it to be mean or embarrass him. It was a stupid and terrible decision, and I regret it. Furthermore, it is difficult to show someone you care while they are being neglected. I contacted him after he left to see if he was okay, but he left it as read. I inquired again when I came home, but there was still no response. I asked if we could discuss it. Again, no reaction. I asked if he could explain why he was so angry with me, but he didn't say anything. I gave up and went to prepare dinner. After supper, I implored him to quit ignoring me. No response. When I inquired if he wanted me to leave, he said, "You can stay, I don't care." So I asked him again whether he'd stop ignoring me if I stayed, and when he answered no, I was done. While I don't think it's fair to ignore someone like that, I know I handled it horribly, and I feel terrible for being so nasty to him. Anyway, I texted him early this morning to apologize and to see if he was available to talk after work. Around midday he texted me okay. We met at home, and he was obviously cool and spoke little. I apologized for everything, for laughing, for informing our child, for asking him to get over it, and for the most shameful part, telling him he disgraced himself. He remained silent the entire time, and after I finished, he just questioned why I had told our child. I explained, and then we sat in silence for what seemed like eternity. Then unexpectedly, he said, "I scared you, right?" I told him that short and he did. He claimed he could feel it. I inquired what caused him to react so aggressively, but he didn't know. He simply said he panicked when he realized he had soiled the bed and it grew worse when I told our child. He stated he was furious with me for it. I apologize again for making him feel this way, and he apologized for scaring me. I'm not going to go over everything we said after that. It was a long conversation. To summarize, neither of us is pleased with how we behaved, and we both apologized for it. He wasn't as outraged as I had assumed about my laughter, but we agreed I shouldn't have informed our child. However, he is no longer upset about it and does not consider it to be a significant concern anymore. We both agreed that he shouldn't have neglected me in that manner, and I handled it horribly and harshly. We have accepted each other's apologies, but I still feel guilty about being so rude to him. Update 2. To begin with, because there were questions regarding why my husband peed the bed while sober, I attempted to persuade him to see a doctor after so many of you suggested it. But he flatly refused, stating it was meaningless because they would do nothing regardless. He's wet the bed once before, and both times he was weary and stressed out. So that could have been the cause. I'm not sure. This is becoming long, so if you simply want to read about my spouse divorcing me, you can stop right now. My second post was composed shortly after I had apologized. Based on the initial replies to my first post, I assumed that I must be a bad person and felt sorry for him. But to be honest, I never thought my original actions were particularly awful, and I still don't. That is not to say that I did not deserve some of the hate I received. I certainly did, but some of it was simply filthy, and some of the things I was reviled for never occurred, save in the minds of commenters. I felt terrible since the effect of my actions was so dreadful, despite the fact that I had no intention of hurting him. So the apology was genuine, and by the time of the second post, I was relieved we were on speaking terms and hoped we could put this behind us. It turned out that I couldn't. Shortly after, I realized I was still concerned by his actions. I also began to receive more remarks from people who noticed problems with his behavior, which I appreciate because it confirmed to me that it was most likely serious. What I purposefully left out of my first post in order to get unbiased feedback was the fact that my hubby can be unstable at times. He can be immature and sensitive, struggles to regulate his emotions, particularly rage, and is sometimes difficult to understand. It's probably due to mental health concerns, which isn't fair to him, and I feel terrible about it. But sometimes I just find him annoying and exhausting. I guess I was called out for it in my first post. He'd been in contact with a mental health team for years, but if they hadn't prescribed his prescriptions, he would have stopped seeing them long ago. Anyway, I was getting weary of constantly catering to his mood swings and failing to confront his concerns. So his exaggerated and, in my mind, threatening reaction to our child peeing the bed and me notifying him felt like too much, even though I knew he was hurt. As I mentioned, I had never been intimidated by him before, so it bothered me, even though he did nothing. I tried to talk to him about what happened again, particularly why he became so angry that I felt intimidated. I even questioned him whether it had anything to do with him peeing the bed as a child, based on some suggestions in the comments about him being shamed for it. He simply stated that it did not, and it was evident that he did not want to discuss any of it, so I did not press. He's tough to talk to about feelings or relationship concerns, which may be really irritating for me. To be honest, I had some reservations about staying in this marriage, but they were not severe at the moment. Then around a week before Christmas, he made an unexpected suicide attempt, which was unfortunately not his first. I didn't see it coming and I still feel terrible about it, probably always will. His recall of the preceding hours is hazy, but he insists that he did not mean to harm himself when he left our house that night. But I should have known. It was bad, and we didn't know if he'd make it or in what condition. Fortunately, he lived, but with no long-term consequences. The aftermath was terrible, and when he returned home, he was really ill, lethargic for weeks. The quick answer to why he did it is that he obviously had an excessive amount of anxiety that he wanted to escape, along with his occasional complete lack of impulse control. He made it obvious that it had nothing to do with anything I had done. I had no idea how horrible he was feeling because he did not inform me or anyone else. It's very difficult to help him when he won't tell us how he feels. It terrified me, and it scared him as well, to the point where he knew he needed more support. He's taken it more seriously than he ever has before. When he was offered therapy, he accepted. Now that the wait time is ludicrous, he will begin in October. In the interim, he has been visiting a nurse and a psychiatrist. By April, he was back to normal and he returned to work in early May. Then we discovered I was pregnant. It was unintentional and the result of a birth control error on our part. Despite all of the obvious reasons why we should have terminated the pregnancy, we chose to continue with it. We didn't take this decision lightly, but it was what we wanted. I should mention that he was a complete mess throughout my first pregnancy, and the second, we have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, was equally difficult for him. But for some reason that escapes me now, we expected things to be different this time around. And it was for a time. At 12 weeks, we discovered that there were actually 2 babies. I know it's bad, but I'd be lying if I said we were delighted about it at first. However, by that time, we had already decided to have a baby, so we both agreed to proceed with it. After digesting the news, we became quite enthused about it. I'm 23 weeks pregnant and things had been going well until yesterday. When he arrived home from work, he was unhappy. I assumed he had a hard day at work, but when I questioned about it, he responded with an angry diatribe about how dumb we were for having the babies and how we should have terminated them. I was stunned, and when I asked why he was saying that and pointed out that it wasn't a good thing to say, he just said, "Well, you asked, and it's what I feel." I didn't want to talk to him while he was like that, so I told him we'd talk later, when the kids were asleep. When they were done, I asked him what it was all about and where it came from. He said he didn't know, like he does when he doesn't want to discuss something. I tried to push a little but went nowhere. I was frustrated and told him it wasn't fair to say such things and then refused to discuss them. He remained silent for a long time before saying, "Expletive this," and locking himself in the restroom. When he came out, he appeared depressed. I inquired whether he was all right, and he indicated he needed some air. I assured him it was all right to feel sad. However, he objected and vehemently stated that he was not sad. I know I should have let him go, but I had a horrible feeling. I requested him to remain, but he didn't like it and screamed that he didn't want to expletive stay, before slamming the door so violently that the kids woke up. After he departed, all I could do was tend to the children, pretend everything was well and hope he returned safely. I was very worried. When the kids fell back asleep, I contacted him to see if he was okay, and then I cried. He responded almost immediately with, "I'm okay. I'll be home at 5, sorry. I love you," which relieved some of my anxiety, but I remained unhappy and angry. He returned shortly afterwards, definitely high but calmer. He is not addicted, but he does use it occasionally. When he noticed I was crying, he apologized. I told him I wasn't good with him treating me that way, and we had the same talk we'd had before. Him apologizing and me explaining how hurt I was. At that point, I realized I wasn't even angry anymore, though I probably should have been. I simply asked him not to run away like that again. He said he wouldn't, but deep down I know he will. We went to bed after that, but I was unable to sleep. To be honest, I haven't felt fantastic today. I'm terrified, disappointed and feel extremely dumb. When my husband arrived home today, he was in a better mood. He was such a sweetheart. He even spoke to me. He apologized for yesterday and expressed disappointment in himself for his actions. He stated he's been working so hard to act like a normal person, his words, and is weary of failing all the time. I know he's trying and doesn't always fail, so I advised him not to be too hard on himself. I asked how he was feeling, and he replied that he wasn't feeling well, but he couldn't clarify. When I inquired how horrible not well was, he stated it wasn't too bad and I shouldn't worry. He promised to let me know if things grew worse, but I'm not sure I can trust him. I'm terrified he'll crash again, and I'm not sure I have the energy for it right now. I am quite sure he doesn't either. I really hope that treatment will benefit him, but I'm not sure what we can realistically anticipate from it. What if it doesn't make any difference? What should we do then? I know my posts have primarily focused on the negative, so it may not appear that way, but I adore my hubby. I don't want to live without him, but I also don't want to live this way. I'm not sure, maybe I'm just excessively sensitive right now, being pregnant and all. Boss reprimanded me for not answering an email in 4 minutes. Now I'm wondering if I should quit due to her unreasonable demands. I've been at my new job for just over a month and have very grave doubts about whether it's going to work out. I'm finding it impossible to make my supervisor, Martha, happy. Her criticism is frequent, harsh and in my opinion, often very unreasonable. The incident that has me writing to you happened today, when she reprimanded me in writing for failing to answer an email in 4 minutes. To set the scene. Earlier this week, Martha and my other boss, I support 2 teams but it's an uneven split. Unfortunately my primary boss is the awful one, had a meeting with me in which Martha told me all the things I was doing wrong and what needed to change. I'm trying to understand where she's coming from, but I'm just not used to a work situation like this. She proudly describes herself as a micromanager. She doesn't appear to know the word has a negative connotation. And is looking for constant immediate responsiveness, over-communication, her words, and accountability. I understand she's the boss and it's her call, but it's a hard adjustment. I'm not used to being watched so closely. Every job I've had, the boss has been concerned with results, not with knowing exactly where I am every minute, hearing back from me instantly, etc. All week, I've worked so hard to keep her happy and show her that I took the conversation to heart. Then today, I received an email, in which Martha was CC'd, from a senior partner asking for contact info for one of our clients. I saw the email come in while I was working on a project for the other boss. I made the apparently grave error of not stopping instantly, but instead finished up the line in the Excel sheet I was working on, then opened the email and began gathering the requested info. Before I had finished, Martha replied to both of us, sending the partner the requested information, the wrong information for the record, but I'll get to that later. I saw her email, which arrived in my inbox a whopping 4 minutes after the email from the partner, stopped working on my response since it was no longer necessary, and went back to the project I'd been working on. Then I get an email from Martha. Jane, this would have been a great opportunity to build a relationship with the partner. Why didn't you dive in and assist? 4 minutes, Allison. 4 minutes. A bathroom break can take 4 minutes. I just feel like she's determined to hate me. I tried so hard all week to do everything exactly the way she likes, and she still found something to criticize. If she wanted me to answer the email, why didn't she give me a grace period of, maybe 5 minutes before answering it herself? Also, as I said earlier, she gave him the wrong information. He asked for the email address and she gave the physical address, which to me seems like she was so eager to answer the email, so that she could blame me for not answering it, that she rushed and sent the wrong info. By the way, if I sent incorrect information to a partner, she would act like it was the end of the world. But it's no big deal when she does it. Also, for the record, I understand some things are very time sensitive. I still think 4 minutes is kind of a stretch, for almost any situation, but I also want to make it clear. This was not an urgent request. It could have waited 5, maybe even, 10 minutes. I'm not asking whether my boss is being reasonable here. I'm very confident that she isn't. My question to you is, do you think I should start looking for a new job? I just feel like this is such an unreasonable criticism that there's no way I'm ever going to make this person happy. She either has no idea how to manage people or has developed an instantaneous hatred for me and will continue to find things to criticize no matter how hard I try. I've been so stressed out since I started this job, worrying about messing up, which not surprisingly, is probably leading me to mess up more. Is this salvageable or should I start looking for an escape plan? Update. Your response was really helpful. Martha had already fucked with my head so much that she really had me doubting myself. So much so that I honestly thought you might take her side and ask me, but why did it take you 4 whole minutes to answer the email? So for you and the commenters to reassure me that yes, she was being unreasonable was really helpful. As for an update. Reader, she fired me. Yes, I took your advice and started looking for a new job. She fired me before I could find one. The 4-minute email happened about a month after I started and I got fired just under the 3-month mark. The reason given was that I was making too many mistakes and that they couldn't trust me with my assignments. I'm curious how it's going with my replacement, if things like accidentally saving a draft to the wrong folder, in your first month at a new job, qualify as fireable offenses. I mess up sometimes, more than I normally do. But I think it's because of how Martha treated me. She was so volatile that I didn't feel comfortable asking questions, and she also would just disappear fairly often. She can disappear for 3 hours. I'm in trouble for missing a phone call because I was using the restroom. So a lot of times I had to make my best guess, and yes, amazingly, my best guess was always wrong. She was always coming after me with artificially compressed deadlines, so I usually had to send her work without having the amount of time I'd prefer to proofread, double-check, etc. Sometimes I thought she was moving the goalposts. Often she would say, "I told you to do X not Y," and I'd think, though I'd never say it out loud lest I face her wrath. "I don't think you did actually." And sometimes it was 100% clear that she was just inventing reasons to berate me. See, for example, 4-minute email. When I got the email that I wrote to you about, I knew deep down that she was just never going to let up. Clearly, she would find something to criticize whether I did something wrong or not, and in the end probably fire me, or bully me until I quit. That played out many times in the weeks before my firing. If I made a minor mistake, she lost her mind. If I didn't make a mistake, she would invent one. For example, she would email me to say things like, "The meeting has been over for 30 minutes. By this point you should have emailed me to ask what our next steps are." Maybe, but see above hesitancy to initiate contact with a volatile boss who finds fault with everything I say or do. I absolutely couldn't win and it was just a horrible, stressful, demoralizing experience. The good news is that I did find another job that I'm much happier with, though the first few weeks were very tough as I tried to put the experience with Martha behind me. I was afraid to ask questions, thought I was about to be fired every time I made a mistake, etc. But as time went by and it became clear to me that I was now working with reasonable people, it got much better. While I didn't get out in time, I'm grateful for you and the commenters because, as I said, it helped me to keep some perspective in the face of a person doing her best to destroy my faith in my basic competency. I really wish this hadn't happened to me, and while I'm happy in my new job, and it's a bump in both title and salary, I actually now have Martha's job title. Seriously, suck it, Martha. I would never say it happened for a reason. Or that I'm grateful for it in any way. The fact that someone could bully me like this, be 100% in the wrong, fire me, and get away with all of it is really hard to accept. But all I can do is look forward. After discovering my brother's wedding was fake and being excluded, our once close bond is shattered, leaving me heartbroken. Me, 30F, and my brother, 31M, have always been as close as twins. Our closeness is a foundation in our family. One of the true consistent relationships, obviously not in a weird way. When we fight, which is never or small fights, the whole family feels it and tries to fix it because of how unnatural it feels for everyone. He gave me away at my wedding. I named a child after him. We have matching tattoos. We talk on the phone almost every day. He started planning his wedding. He asked me to be a groomsman, while his friend, 35-ish F, would be his best man. Everyone thought this was odd because of his role at my wedding, and none of us really know/have met his friend. I expressed how it hurt my feelings and was met with, "My wedding isn't about you, okay? Fine, I'll do what you ask." During the planning he called me every day. We sent ideas. I helped with making stuff. I didn't mind. I decided early on to not focus on titles but just to make this day as amazing as possible for my brother. He asked me to be a flower fairy, because this was a gay child-free wedding. I agreed. During the process of shoe picking, him and the best man would shoot down all of my ideas. She would send very basic heels that were around $100. Heck no. I told her my budget was $45 for shoes, especially for plain gold heels. The wedding party all had a very mean girl mentality. I felt it from day one. There was the wedding party, and then me. I chalk this up to not really knowing them well and proximity. All of them live in a different state than me. They even went as far as saying the shoes I like were too slutty. They were the type of small heels that place up around your calf or around your ankle. After this I begged to come as a guest. So I could wear what I want and not feel this weird mean girl mod mentality from the rest of the wedding group. My brother says, "No way, I can't get married without you being by my side." I get to the state the wedding will be, and the first day I'm there I find out the best man had the bachelor party the night before I got there. Everyone from the wedding party was included aside from me. I let it go and focus on the wedding and doing my part. So, I slap on some wings, dance my way down the aisle and give my very first wedding speech. All goes well. The wedding was awesome until the drag show. Yes, they had a drag show at their wedding. During the show one of the queens comes on and basically announces that this was all fake because my brother and his partner had gotten married 1 year prior. I turned to the rest of the wedding party and asked, did they know? They did. They were at the real wedding. Everyone but me. I'm sitting there trying to process, and my mom, who gave them $3,000 for the wedding because they needed it, storms up to ask if I knew. I told her no, and she immediately switched to being supportive to me because of how bad the situation was. It's not about them already being married. They can do what they want. I myself spent over $4,000 on this wedding. Because I was coming from out of state, I had to get a plane ticket. I paid for a week at an Airbnb. One night most of the wedding party stayed at the house I rented because they didn't have anywhere else to stay, and did not even offer to pay for any of it. The dress for the wedding. The fairy wings I handmade. All of it. I spent too much time and money on this wedding. But then I start to remember all of the lies. They got married. And 3 days after, my brother was at my house while I gave birth to my last child because I always wanted him to be a part of my huge moments. He held my newborn, knowing he had just gotten married, and said nothing. They gaslight me saying I was crazy feeling left out. Him saying he can't get married without me. Lying to my face every single day for a year. Just, all of it. After realizing all of this, I tried to leave without making any sense. His husband mockingly asked me if I was mad. I said I'd talk to them another day and they should enjoy their night. I was able to leave without anyone else at the wedding knowing I was upset. Before I could leave, the happy couple pulls me into a room. My brother is crying, saying he didn't do this to hurt me. I keep it together. Say enjoy your night and we will talk another day. His husband says, oh, so there is something to talk about then. I repeat, we can talk another day. They ask me to brunch. I say I'll see if I'm up, ready for it when they go. The next morning I realize the whole wedding party and some guests are going to lunch. I choose not to go because I am not going to put myself in a situation where I am ganged up on. Again over my feelings about the wedding and wedding party. After that I left the wedding chat on Snap, which they were notified of. At this point it's the next morning and his husband starts blowing me and my friend, who was with me, up. We ignore and go about our day. I have not looked at or spoken to my brother since. Aside from short responses to get me to the airport the day I left. When I left, I asked them to crop me out of the wedding photos as I didn't want to be associated with a fake wedding and I didn't want a reminder of how embarrassing it was and how stupid I looked. I told them I didn't want to speak to them again. My brother says nothing and his husband says you're a narcissist and I feel bad for the people who have to deal with you. Pretty sure narcissistic more aligns with tricking 100 people into coming to a wedding, some of the wedding that was paid for by other people, just to tell everyone haha this was just a giant party for us. Joke's on you is probably more narcissistic than me reacting to the time, money, energy spent to attend a fake wedding. But, alright, lol, I just don't know where to go from here. I have them both blocked. There is a line in our family. My brother has not tried to fix it. He has the chance to show me what I meant to him. He did. And now I have to believe him. I'm going to try to update in sections. 1. I guess to answer if he is in an abusive relationship that really is up to each person to decide. I will not, and won't label him as abusive because I'm not in that relationship with them. My mentioning of the drag queens was because they are a part of the story. Hello, it was one of the queens that made the announcement. I'm not sure why some of you are taking that as me being anything phobic. Mentioning that somebody is gay, or that drag queens attended a wedding is a part of a story and it's factual. It's not anything phobic. Our family, as well as the new husband's family, have always been nothing but supportive and accepting. My mom has 2 kids who are very hurt. She could never hate my brother, but she definitely does not like the decisions that he has been making. She is doing her best to support her 2 children. Gay wedding. No kids allowed? 2 separate statements, lol. They definitely did not ban gay children from their wedding. LOL. I mentioned both of these things to explain why I was a flower fairy. No kids, flower girl. Fairy to go along with the gay dragon theme. Hello people. I proudly slap those wings on and dance my way down the aisle. That is definitely not anything phobic, lol. For those of you who are saying anything along those lines, you are definitely reaching and projecting. Using narcissistic when it actually does not apply to the person, in my opinion, is trying to weaponize more info in the comments top questions. For some reason, I cannot edit my post to add this, so hopefully most of you will see it. Me and my new husband, as far as I know, did not have any hard feelings going into the wedding. There was a time when they were dating that I expressed I didn't like the fact that my brother was working 2 jobs for a new husband to try to become a music producer. I watched my brother kill himself for years to try to support both of them while he sat around smoking weed in his studio, and ever since then new husband decided that I hate him, even though we have since squashed all of those issues when he got a job and started contributing. Even when we did not get along, I always made it very clear, if my brother loves you and I love you too. Both families have been very supportive. There's no homophobia or anything like that on either side. Is my brother in an abusive relationship? I don't know, I guess that's what each individual person would consider abusive. I don't want to label my brother's partner unfairly as abusive when I'm not in a relationship myself and my brother has never expressed feeling abused. I think if you consider this behavior manipulative and abusive, then that's up to your own discretion. However, I am not going to give anyone that label. I didn't decide this was a fake wedding. They did when they decided to announce in the middle of the ceremony that they were already married. They made it a fake wedding when they announced that it was fake. LOL. Hello. Russian bots, pushing propaganda. Okay people, I only mentioned the fact that there was a drag show at the wedding because that is a very uncommon thing. I found out that my brother had been married for a year and had been lying to my face via drag queen announcements. That is just stating the facts. That has absolutely nothing to do with the drag community, or how myself, or anybody else should feel about them. They were paid to do a job and they showed up and did what they were paid to do. I have no ill will towards anybody in any type of community. Those of you who are saying to me, mentioning them comes off as judgmental. For those of you who think it's weird that I did not mention that he was gay. Why is that weird? And why is that relevant to the story? LOL. The people who had their panties in a wad probably have more of an issue with the community than I do. Stop making this post about anything other than what it is about. At the end of the day, I am mourning the loss of my brother. I am mourning the relationship that I thought him and I had. And to be honest, based off of my perspective of our closeness, I am honestly questioning my own sanity. Do you generally spend hours talking to somebody, getting matching tattoos, planning a wedding, being at holidays and childbirth with somebody that you're not close with? At least on my end, I did not make up how close I was with my brother if it was not reciprocated, and he is a very good actor. And honestly, me questioning our closeness has been the most hurtful part about this entire experience. It's made me question if I'm crazy or not. Gay wedding, child-free, two separate statements. It was not a wedding where they did not invite gay kids, lol. For anyone who reads it like that, you are extra weird. My brother is obviously gay and got married to a man. Therefore, it is a gay wedding. Children were not allowed to attend the wedding there for a child-free. Two separate things, people. Both are okay. And I also want to say that I would never have slapped fairy wings on my back and danced down the aisle if I was not 100% supportive of them. Please stop trying to make this an issue other than two siblings having a falling out. Another comment. Okay, I feel like you are very much twisting the story, lol. I did not make sure everyone knew I was leaving the wedding. I actually left very discreetly at almost midnight when the wedding was ending at 1 a.m. I did not make my brother cry. His husband kept trying to force a conversation that I asked respectfully multiple times to not have the night of the wedding so that way it would not ruin their day. I showed up in every single thing my brother asked of me. I took the bullying, and it kept my mouth shut for most of it after I was accused of trying to make the wedding about me. From that point on, I went out of my way to do everything I could to make his day as special as I could for him. Comment about her husband. Brother tried to contact my husband to ask how to pay back what I spent to come to the wedding. My husband said that he was not going to get involved. Brother tried to convince my husband that I was overreacting. My husband told brother that is absolutely not true and I have every right to be upset and what he did was bonkers. My husband very much has been supportive but also is very sad to see me and my brother fighting like this. Update 1, I'm going to do my best to put as much information as I can but it ends up really long and Reddit will not let me post. So I'm going to try to answer all of the questions and I'm going to paraphrase a lot. The update is, there is no update. Things are the same, they are still blocked. One suggestion was that I should write him a letter, which I actually did the day after this happened and I left it in his room. I laid out all of my feelings and described them in detail. How hurt I was. We had a 2-hour drive where he said absolutely nothing even after reading my letter. I did end up losing all of my manners when I landed and my husband informed me that he sent him a message basically saying that I was overreacting. I said a lot of things that I was not very proud of. At the end of the day I stand by my truth, and I stand by my perspective of what happened. Please stop trying to make this a phobia issue. Both families have been nothing but supportive. They represent themselves, not an entire group of people. Stop being so simple-minded. The mention of drag queens was only there because one of the queens announced that they had gotten married a year ago. Plus, how many times do you see a drag show at a wedding? If you read some imaginary undertone, that is definitely a you issue. Moving on. New husband in my opinion is not somebody that I would label as abusive. However, abuse is subjective. I think this more falls down to him being very emotionally immature. I am not a yes man, I was for the wedding. That's an appropriate time to be a yes man. Outside of that, new husband has always been intimidated by my opinion. I think he knows I can see through his BS. Weak men hate strong women. That's a fact. And that's the case here. However, we did not have any type of beef on the wedding day. Or for years before. I made it clear that if my brother loves you and wants to spend his life with you, then I support that. My mom is trying her best to be as supportive as she can to both of her kids. She could never hate my brother, although she absolutely hates what he did. As far as I go, I don't know who I am without my brother. He was just as important to me as my children and my husband. It was always me and him. To say that I am mourning is an understatement. This whole situation has made me question a 30-year relationship. Realizing his capability to live a double life that I'm not a part of has rocked to my entire world in my entire sense of reality. I'm not okay. I'm going to spend the next year being no contact. I'm going to go to therapy and get my mind, body and soul in the best place possible, while pushing as much good karma into the world as I can. Maybe then I will be able to decide if I want to close that door fully and permanently, or if I'm at a place where I'm willing to create a new normal with him. At the end of the day, I am absolutely devastated and heartbroken. I also want to address frequently asked things. 1. Baby was no fear of being overshadowed. The date that they got married was because it was a dating anniversary for them, nothing to do with me or my pregnancy. 2. I am aware that people get married and have a large ceremony later. That's okay. It's not what they did, it's how they did it. 3. I am not a Russian bot trying to push propaganda, lol. Those comments did make me laugh though. 4. If I had the answer to why they would feel comfortable doing this to me, then I guess I wouldn't be as dumbfounded as I am. I'm not leaving out any type of detail. Honestly, it would be a lot easier if I did something so horrible to deserve this, because then I wouldn't have to wonder why. I'd know. At the end of the day, I'm not okay. I don't know if there's anything he could do to fix this. I'll always wonder if he's telling me the truth or what he's hiding. After the way that his husband spoke to me, and after him allowing him to do that, I'm honestly so disgusted with both of them. I deleted the original post because I didn't want them to be attacked. Sadly, I still have a need to try to protect him. I don't know you guys. The brother-in-law appeared and made a comments in the original post. Brother-in-law here, I'll just start by saying for one, having a big wedding ceremony 1 year later was not my idea, but once we decided that we were going to do it, we consulted many times about telling people beforehand for fear of things like this happening. I've never had a great relationship with Op, but we've tried to make things work mostly for my husband, her brother, because I knew they were very close and I wasn't too fond of her due to our interactions in the past. I know how important those close relationships are and would never wish to tear that apart. Op didn't want to talk about it at all. We tried to apologize and explain that the intention was never for any humiliation or insult to anyone at all. But she wouldn't have any conversation about it, especially the night of. The next day at the Airbnb I tried to open a dialogue with Op about how she was feeling, and she only responded with snark and comments about how there's nothing to talk about. That's the small conversation where the "so there is something to talk about" statement was said by me. I eventually let it be and left the room. Everything that was said by her didn't help me or anyone understand really how she felt about it, and the little she did say seemed very self-centered and about how this was a plan to humiliate her specifically, which it most definitely was not. Reading through this now though, I do understand a bit more why she felt that way. And for that I truly am sorry. Anyway, I'm not entirely sure how these work or if there's a proper way to post this, but ask me anything. Reply. All I'm going to say is, you both are married now and you made your choice. You both are a partnership. You both collectively decided to do this and decided it was a good idea, and the consequences are, I want nothing to do with either one of you ever again. That's it. There is no reason or purpose to keep having an open dialogue about this because it's done. And you starting out your post with "you don't like me" pretty much confirmed everything that I said. I wish you and him nothing but happiness, but this conversation is over. I've heard your side of things and it still isn't good enough to justify what you both did. And I'm choosing to walk away from both of you. Another reply. He admits in the text above he knew. He literally says we didn't want to tell people because they were there and happy. He knew what he was doing. It was a huge manipulation. Lying to people to get what you want is manipulation. Omitting things from people to not give them the power to make a fair choice is also very much manipulation. They knew what they were doing. In the sentence the other people said, brother doesn't value sister the same way. That's it. That's the end of the argument. They both showed me exactly what I meant to them. The motivation behind it is not really important anymore. Maybe this was just a total oversight and a mistake, but regardless, the result was the same. And the consequence remains the same. I want nothing to do with y'all. I wish you happiness because I will always love you. If you make him happy, then I am so happy for the both of you. Truly I am. Our relationship was the sacrifice for this day and you both decided to make it. I reacted to it and was trying to sort through my feelings by posting on this podcast. I did not expect for it to go viral, so for that I'm sorry. I did try to remove the post, but it was too late. I realized that you don't like me due to past interactions. And that's fine. So what I'm about to say won't matter. My heart is completely shattered. I'm literally going through a mourning process like someone died. Because that night the relationship N and I had did die. He has always been my person. He isn't now, and I've never felt more alone. I honestly don't know if I'm going to be okay. Both of your responses just confirm everything I said and everything I felt. You have your side, I have mine. But ultimately everyone is feeling the loss of me and N. This changes everything in the family. I'm going to continue to root for both of you. Always. But I am going to do it from my side of the world. In an emergency, either of you can call me and I'll be there. But outside of that, I am good with both of you. You don't like me, I'm out of your life now. You don't get to defer to Neva when it comes to me but want to orchestrate our conversation after he did what he did. You are not a safe place for me. Just like I'm sure you feel like I'm not either. You win. Go be with N. Go have a happy life. Update 2. If you're reading this, you're here because you're super invested in my family's tea. LOL. But really, I'm okay. I'm going to be okay, or maybe I won't. Either way, I am going to keep moving forward, and if you want to come along with me, you can follow me on TikTok. I'm not trying to be an influencer. I'm just going to use it as a diary/coping safe space. My name on there is Tukari, 29. New update. I wish I could be writing that my brother had begged for my forgiveness. Those things somehow managed to go back to how they were. But they haven't. Nothing with my situation has changed. The only thing they truly changed was my perception of someone I thought I knew. I know a lot of people can't understand because you're not close with a sibling. But this has been like a true death for me. And sometimes my grief is so big I don't know what to do with it. He hasn't reached out, he hasn't explained. He hasn't even cared if I'm being fully honest, and what a mindfuck that has been. To go from someone being as important to you as your husband and children, to them showing you over and over how little you do, and ever did mean to them. He has doubled down on the "I didn't do anything wrong and you're overreacting." Which is honestly just the biggest slap in the face. If someone can't admit they did something wrong, then they will never actually be sorry, and the chances of behavior repeating itself are sky high. A lot of you pointed out our relationship might have only been this important to me, and I think you all were right. For a long time I cried every day. I cried during the times we would normally talk on the phone, or when a song reminded me of him. And sometimes I've cried for no reason at all other than just feeling like there is a hole in me now. But I find myself crying less and less. And sometimes when I think of him, my first thought that follows will be, wow, it's been days since he has even crossed my mind. And I guess that's progress, right? I'm not crying every day anymore. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't still shedding tears. Tears he doesn't deserve, but they come anyway. Because that's the thing about unconditional love. It still exists even when the other person broke your heart. It doesn't go away. But sometimes the other person can just no longer have access to the unconditional anymore. We have spoken. Briefly. Over the phone during the holidays to deal with a family emergency involving another family member. It was pretty much all business. Everyone around us kept saying, "I'm so glad you guys are talking again." But we weren't talking again. We were just dealing with business. And I guess that's all the talking we will ever do again. At one point my husband chimed into our phone conversation and told him how much he misses him too, and he cried. I guess I forgot I wasn't the only one losing someone, but either way that doesn't change anything. My kids have not even noticed. He did try to send Christmas gifts to them through my mom, but only because I said something about him not acknowledging my son on his birthday. So is that all he'll ever be? Impersonal generic gifts that my kids get once a year? I told my mom to send them back and that they don't need a gift uncle. Honestly, they have enough of those on my husband's side. With that I also came to the realization that if you don't have a good respectful relationship with me, you absolutely do not get access to my children. And to be fully honest, he never really took that much interest in my kids anyway. I know he cares and loves them, but as far as a personal one-on-one relationship with them, let's just say the extent of how much he got to know them was always me telling him about them. So there really wasn't a deep pre-established relationship with any of my kids and him. And with him not being on good terms with me, or my husband, I'm not going to allow him access to my children. And I would honestly feel the same way and react to anyone this way. If someone shows you over and over again that they do not love and respect you, why would you allow them access to your kids? Especially if all they are is a gift once a year. I'm not healed. But I'm on my way. It's not better, but it's getting better. I feel I am suffering the consequences of someone else's actions. I was spiraling, but I am finding my new normal. I'll update again at the 1-year mark. My husband finally cut ties with his toxic mom and sister after they demanded we give up our house for my jobless sister-in-law and her family. My in-laws have a very toxic connection with my spouse, and it is beginning to ruin my life. Growing up, my husband was my favorite, the golden child, and my mother-in-law was very close to him. Jacob has informed me that because his father was so busy at work, he and his mother spent a lot of time together. However, I've noticed that his sister, Sarah, is not treated equally by my mother-in-law. Although I am confident that my mother-in-law loves both of her children, I have repeatedly observed that she prioritizes my husband. I'm sure Sarah felt the same way growing up, which is why my husband has always attempted to fill the void by being a kind elder brother to her and always being there for her. But the truth is that Sarah and my mother-in-law would sometimes behave in such a ridiculous manner that it crossed the line. For example, when we initially started dating, Jacob, a recent college graduate, and my in-laws, including Sarah, shared a house. My in-laws had offered my husband a totally own level so that he could have his own privacy and welcome whomever he pleased. This is why he would occasionally invite me to his home to spend the night with him. However, several times in the morning, Sarah would storm into our room while we were asleep without knocking. As you may guess, we were not always properly dressed, but she would act as if everything was normal and begin talking to Jacob about utterly random topics. This was very strange for me because I was uncomfortable with her seeing me in my lingerie. Before anyone points out, I absolutely understand that Jacob was living with his family at the time, so I should have expected this, but is knocking on the door before entering really that much to ask? I suppose siblings can be quite close, but she and I didn't know each other very well when Jacob and I first started dating, so I thought it was really rude. Naturally, I spoke with Jacob about it and informed him that I would not be going over unless he installed a lock on his door. He agreed. But as you can guess, Sarah, who attempted to storm into the room the next morning but was unsuccessful, began ranting at us about why the door was locked. She began jiggling and hammering on the door, begging her brother to let her in. Jacob eventually let her in, and she stormed into the room, asking why he had set the lock in the first place. When she recognized me, she pointed to me and began ranting at him, asking if it was because of this skank. I was astonished by how harsh and insulting she sounded. Jacob told Sarah that he wanted to install the door lock, but Sarah was not convinced. She angrily informed him that they were siblings and should not keep any secrets between them. Jacob told her that he had no secrets, and that he had put the lock so she wouldn't barge in when we were asleep, which was quite disturbing. Sarah violently flipped her head towards me and exclaimed that it was all my fault, saying that I was interfering with her and her brother. This was too much for me, as I am generally non-confrontational, so I excused myself to visit the restroom. I could hear her yelling, with Jacob attempting to calm her. When she eventually left, Jacob came in to comfort me. He apologized for her actions and informed me that he would speak with her again so she could apologize to me as well. When I arrived the following weekend, Sarah apologized and offered me a pitiful excuse, claiming that she needed to speak with Jacob urgently and so believed it would be good for me to come in. Jacob forcefully asked her not to bother us again, and she agreed sheepishly. Although this issue appeared to be remedied, it was not the only strange conduct she demonstrated towards Jacob. If Jacob and I differed on something, even something as trivial as movies, and Sarah was around, she would begin telling him that he should date someone with comparable likes, meaning that we were unsuitable for each other. Jacob would give her a condemning look, but she would simply smirk. Another episode was Sarah asking me awkward questions about my background in an attempt to delve into my life. Jacob and I had been open about our past since the beginning, but I didn't feel comfortable addressing it with his sister. Regardless of my thoughts, she would ask me questions like, "Why did your ex break up with you? Were you not suitable for him?" Can make remarks like, "My brother's previous girlfriend was far more attractive than you." All of these queries and comments arose when she and I were alone. I began to suspect that she was trying to play a game with me, bringing me down. I initially kept my lips shut, but as the situation progressed, I had enough. One day, I responded to her taunting by stating, I liked my ex-boyfriend's family better than Jacob's because he didn't have nosy, overbearing family members. Sarah was taken aback by my reply, which temporarily silenced her. Even though Sarah had a strange relationship with my husband, my mother-in-law was no exception. When I first entered Jacob's life, my mother-in-law ignored me, but once she discovered we were serious, she began acting as if I was attempting to steal her son away. She would purposefully ignore me at dinners and family gatherings, as if I did not exist. Jacob saw this occasionally and tried to talk to her, but she never changed. My mother-in-law once referred to me as stuck-up and spoiled, just because my parents put me to a private school while she was a public school teacher. I also know she tried to talk Jacob out of marrying me, telling him he should look for a better spouse. Fortunately, my spouse did not care about her view and proposed to me nonetheless. My mother-in-law and Sarah were shocked to learn that Jacob had proposed. Both contacted me, telling me that it was a horrible decision and that, because Jacob wouldn't listen to them, I should quit the relationship and return the ring. I found this quite strange and declined, stating that they were crossing a line by asking me to do something like that when I loved Jacob and wanted to spend the rest of my life with him. When they realized they couldn't persuade me, my mother-in-law reluctantly changed her mind, telling me that I should strive to be the best wife for him and care for him in the same manner she did for years. I was rather offended, but I tried not to take her remarks too seriously. Sarah, on the other hand, accused me of being a gold digger and claimed her brother deserved someone with higher status. She even threatened to expose me before our wedding so Jacob would not marry me. Following this conversation, I immediately spoke with Jacob about everything. He was taken aback by how disrespectful they were towards me. He challenged them, but my mother-in-law and Sarah continued to believe that I was unsuitable for him. Jacob told me to disregard them, assuring me that he loved me regardless of their opinions. Despite his reassuring remarks, I felt horrible that his own family would not embrace me. Jacob and I had already chosen to pay for our wedding ourselves, so when my mother-in-law offered to cover half of the cost, we politely declined. Despite Jacob's reassuring remarks, I felt horrible that his own family would not embrace me. Jacob and I had already planned to pay for our own wedding, so when my mother-in-law offered to cover half of the costs, we politely declined, with Jacob explaining how hard we had worked to save money specifically for this occasion. Instead of being happy for us, she became even more angry, and she began telling Jacob how sad she was that he no longer needed her. However, Jacob's father appeared to be quite pleased with us. Unlike his sister and mother, his father was very calm and never had any issues with our connection. Since my mother-in-law continued to complain to Jacob, we made a compromise by telling her that we would love for her to organize the rehearsal dinner for us. She agreed, and we appreciated her generosity. However, when the wedding approached, events took an unexpected turn. The first instance came when Sarah invited herself to join us for supper, telling Jacob how much she missed him. Jacob and I were living on our own following our engagement, so we assumed she genuinely wanted to spend time with her brother. We agreed, and Jacob asked me directly if I was comfortable with having supper with her. I reluctantly consented, not wanting to be nasty to my soon-to-be sister-in-law. While we were enjoying our dinner, Sarah abruptly began discussing how much she despised cheating partners, claiming that cheaters were nothing but useless pieces of trash. We stared at her, curious about where she was headed with this. Then, out of nowhere, she looked me directly in the eyes and asked how it felt to be a useless piece of trash. My brow furrowed in perplexity as Sarah began to rant, accusing me of having an affair with my co-worker Zach. Jacob, also perplexed, asked her what she meant by saying. Sarah proudly hauled out photos of me and one of my co-workers, waving them around and claiming that she had caught me red-handed. I knew I'd never been unfaithful to Jacob, so I was curious as to why she assumed I was having an affair. Looking through the photos, they appeared to be entirely innocent. It's true that Zach and I were close co-workers, but only because we started at the same time and helped each other out when we made mistakes, so our manager wouldn't criticize us. Zach even had a girlfriend, which Jacob knew about. I don't have a lock on my phone, and I've always been open with Jacob about all of my colleagues. Sarah had turned these pleasant moments caught in photographs into something they were not. Evidence of a fictitious affair. In truth, they were far from it. Her false charges irritated me since it was obvious she was attempting to damage my reputation and disrupt my connection with Jacob. Before I could defend myself, Jacob, stunned and plainly upset, moved in to help. He questioned Sarah why she was following me around and photographing me with my co-workers in public places without their permission. When Sarah heard this, she began rationalizing her behavior, claiming she simply wanted to investigate me because I was not of their status, and she was scared I was marrying Jacob to steal his money. Jacob told her unequivocally that her charges were false and that she was creating extra drama out of nothing. He tried to reason with her, telling her to stop spreading lies and attempting to destroy our relationship, but Sarah insisted that Jacob open his eyes to the obvious affair that was going on. I also tried to clarify that we were only co-workers, but Sarah insisted on her charges. As her charges grew more serious, the environment became strained. I had had enough and informed her that I was going to make a police report against her for illegally photographing and stalking me. Her look grew terrified as she inquired whether I was serious. I informed her I had all of the evidence. She had purposely tracked me and took these images without my permission, attempting to slander me with ludicrous lies. Sarah stared at Jacob and then back at me, arguing that she did everything to protect her brother and that it wasn't a big deal. She began imploring Jacob to speak with me, worried that if I filed a complaint it would jeopardize her profession and future. I strongly told her that she could only save herself at this time. Sarah inquired what I wanted. I assured her I wouldn't pursue the complaint if she kept away from my life. Sarah had no other option for escaping the situation at that point. She looked to her brother for support, but Jacob defended me, telling her that she should be grateful I was willing to let it go because what she had done was clearly wrong. Sarah reluctantly agreed to stay away from me, and we have not spoken since that day. Jacob still has a relationship with her, but she has never spoken to me again. The second incident occurred shortly before our wedding, at the rehearsal dinner. My mother-in-law, who had insisted on planning the meal, rebuffed our offer of assistance in any manner. She told us that she would take care of everything. However, when we arrived, it was evident that the preparations were far from what we had anticipated. The rehearsal dinner had plastic tablecloths on picnic tables and chilly Mexican food. My mother-in-law was upset throughout dinner, which marred the festive atmosphere. She drank excessively and began behaving inappropriately with the guests, repeatedly stating how she couldn't wait for the wedding to end and how stressful it had been, despite the fact that she had not contributed monetarily or assisted with the planning. Eventually, my father-in-law became irate and escorted her away. Sarah attempted to excuse her mother's actions, but my father-in-law refused to listen. As you might guess, the entire affair was a fiasco, and I began to worry that both my mother-in-law and Sarah would wreck the wedding the next day. That night, Jacob and I had our first disagreement. I informed him strongly that he needed to uninvite Sarah and his mother because, based on their actions, they would surely try to overshadow us at the wedding. My husband angrily protested, promising me that his father would be present and would not allow them to get away with it. Frustrated, I promised that if he didn't uninvite them, there would be no wedding the following day. Jacob was plainly taken aback by my demand, and even knowing how extreme I sounded, I was concerned about what they might do. I did not want to be embarrassed again in front of my family and friends on our wedding day. Jacob definitely lacked firm boundaries, but I hoped that this ultimatum would make him realize how much his family was interfering with our relationship. Thankfully, Jacob understood and made the proper decision. He called his father early in the morning to inform him that his mother and sister were uninvited. Phil didn't appear startled and promised Jacob that he'd make sure my mother-in-law and Sarah didn't show up there unexpectedly. Shortly after our chat with Phil, my mother-in-law and Sarah began contacting Jacob constantly, apparently trying to persuade him to let them attend the wedding. However, Jacob forcefully told them that he did not feel comfortable having them there because of how they had treated me throughout our relationship. Hearing this, my mother-in-law began accusing me of being a terrible influence and interfering with her relationship with her son. Sarah attempted to argue with him, but Jacob was certain in his decision. I felt horrible that Phil couldn't attend our wedding because of his wife and children. I even felt sorry about issuing the ultimatum. But all of my remorse vanished when I discovered from some of Jacob's cousins that Sarah and my mother-in-law had intended to wear white dresses to our wedding. The cousins informed me that in their family WhatsApp group, which only had female members, Sarah had encouraged the others to wear white as well, stating there was no reason for the bride to be the only one. I was astounded by how low they would go just to hurt me. After knowing this, I was relieved they hadn't been invited. Jacob missed his family, but he could see where I was coming from. Overall, we had a lovely wedding, and no one tried to outdo us. Since that day, my mother-in-law and Sarah have stopped talking to me entirely, which I am absolutely okay with. They only invited Jacob around for dinner or special events, which didn't bother me at all. Phil, on the other hand, was always kind to me, and we stayed in touch over the years. Jacob and I painstakingly saved money and finally purchased a new home this year. It was our first home, and we were overjoyed to own something so meaningful. Jacob's parents and Sarah did come to visit for a modest housewarming celebration, but I went to see my parents and spent time with my family instead. Now, to the major point, my mother-in-law contacted me unexpectedly last month. This was really surprising because Mom and I hadn't spoken since the day I married Jacob. Surprisingly, she casually inquired about my well-being and life circumstances. I was taken aback by her unexpected interest, but I responded pleasantly. Then she questioned how it felt to live in such a spacious house with only Jacob and myself. Her remarks stung since Jacob and I had been trying to conceive for a long time but were unable to do so owing to infertility concerns. Jacob and I had mourned the thought of never having children, but we gradually accepted it. When I first got the news, I informed Jacob that if he wanted to marry someone else and have children, he could divorce me. But Jacob had always stayed by me, assuring me that it was fine to be childless as long as we had each other. Our families were aware of this, so my mother-in-law's comment was very painful. She then told me Sarah was pregnant again. I was astonished because this would be her 6th child. Jacob had told me how her husband was unemployed and did not believe in using contraception, which resulted in these accidental pregnancies. Sarah's boyfriend was the embodiment of laziness, doing nothing around the house to aid her or the kids. I've heard from Jacob that he treats Sarah like a personal maid. He never pays any bills in the house. Sarah works many part-time jobs, while he spends the entire day gaming. Regardless of how much everyone has talked to her, Sarah never breaks up with him. My mother-in-law then went on to add that because Sarah could no longer afford to work during her pregnancy, she thought Jacob and I should give up our apartment because it was too big for a childless couple like us. I was caught aback by her demand and struggled to find words. I inquired whether she was joking, but my mother-in-law responded that she was serious, that Sarah and her husband deserved to live in a larger house. However, because she did not have enough space in her own home to accommodate them, she invited them to come in with us. The weight of her news weighed in the air as I fought to keep my composure in the midst of the emotional storm. I emphasized to her that this was our house, which we were still paying for, and the idea of someone else moving in without our permission was intrusive and ludicrous. However, my mother-in-law said that she had already spoken with Jacob, who had allegedly consented to this. This was strange because Jacob and I were always open with each other, and I knew he would have told me if he had agreed to let his sister and her family stay with us. I firmly told my mother-in-law that because the house belonged to both me and Jacob, he couldn't grant permission without my agreement. No one was allowed to reside here unless both of us agreed. To reach a solution, I told her that I would be pleased to accommodate Sarah and her husband for a few days if they wished, but that they could not stay permanently. My mother-in-law, on the other hand, began yelling, arguing that as a responsible daughter-in-law, I was required to make room for Sarah and her husband. She also assured me that if I complied with her demands, all previous troubles would be forgiven. In rage, I cynically said, "Sure, I'll be pleased to let them take our place. But you see, we're still paying for it, and I'm confident that if Sarah and her husband move in, they will not assist with the mortgage or bills. So how about you take some responsibility and contribute to their living expenses? I'd be grateful if you could just cover the mortgage, and we'll manage the rest. Of course, with only one job, you'll definitely need a second one to cover the home payments. Please let me know when you intend to get that second job." Hearing this, my mother-in-law exploded in wrath, shouting and voicing her dissatisfaction. She said it was crazy of me to want her to pay the mortgage, and I responded that it was equally ridiculous for her to expect us to care for Sarah's family and allow them to move in. This infuriated her even more, and she continued to yell, while I smiled with satisfaction. She eventually disconnected the call when she saw I wouldn't give in to her demands. Soon after, Sarah called and yelled at me for daring to ask her mother to pay our mortgage. She went on to add that she had always known I was a gold digger. I informed her that she was the gold digger, attempting to live with us without contributing. I added that if she wanted to know who the true gold digger was, she could look at her own partner, who did nothing to assist her. This appeared to silence her. I firmly told Sarah that she could argue with me all she wanted, but I would never let her family into our home unless they agreed to help with the mortgage. She accused me of being cruel and putting money before family. The tables had turned and I was relieved at the thought of sticking up for myself and refusing to back down, taking control of my home. However, I feel a little awful thinking about my ex-husband, and I'm here on Reddit wondering if what I've done makes me the villain. Update 1. Thank you to everyone who has expressed their support. To answer the most crucial question that everyone keeps asking, why would my mother-in-law demand such a stupid thing of us? It's because she has always been so entitled. Clearly my husband has tolerated this charade for far too long, and he and I need to sit down and have a serious discussion about it. It's heartbreaking how my mother-in-law can lie about her own kid in order to get her way. My sister-in-law is a pawn in her game, doing whatever her mother-in-law wishes because my mother-in-law has always favored my husband. Sarah simply listens to what her mother says in the hopes of garnering favor as well. In this situation, Sarah stood to benefit because she could rely on us to pay her expenses and care for her children while her useless husband did nothing. I'm waiting for my spouse to return from his business trip so we can discuss. I do not want to discuss this over the phone since it is too important. Update 2. It's been 3 days since I last updated. As I indicated earlier, I was waiting for my husband to return. When he returned, we finally sat down and talked. I told him how his mother had called and demanded that we give up our house to his sister and her family. Jacob was definitely taken aback, so I gave him the whole story. He subsequently said that he had no idea about any of it. Prior to his journey, his mother had only told him that his sister was pregnant. That was all he knew about the situation, and he had no idea his mother would make such unreasonable demands. I informed him forcefully that I expected him to speak with his mother and deal with the matter because I couldn't bear his family anymore. He agreed. Jacob confronted his mother and questioned why she had lied to me about him. When caught red-handed, my mother-in-law attempted to backtrack, claiming that she had not actually lied. She said that she knew Jacob would have no objections to his sister staying with us, so she took matters into her own hands and approached me personally. Jacob stopped her off and questioned why she thought he would be fine with Sarah and her entire family coming in. My mother-in-law explained that because Jacob and Sarah were close, he would naturally want to support her by allowing her family to come in. Hearing this, I closed my eyes in disgust, but remained silent, allowing Jacob to handle his mother. Jacob then firmly told her that he was not going to let Sarah, her unemployed husband, and their 6 children move in with us. He also stated that she had no authority to compel us to take care of them. My mother-in-law started yelling, stating Sarah desperately needed aid at this time. But Jacob informed her it was not our job, and if she wanted to help, she could care for Sarah herself. My mother-in-law then said that Phil didn't want them in their small house, although we lived in a larger house and could easily help out. She even had the audacity to suggest that, since I was childless, assisting Sarah's children would make me feel fulfilled. My eyes widened with surprise, but for the first time, I noticed Jacob's face shift color. He raged at her, stating she had no right to say such rude things about me and couldn't use it to compel me to care for Sarah's children. Jacob went on to say that Phil didn't want anything to do with Sarah since she had turned into a child-birthing machine and that he was over both of them. My mother-in-law tried to backtrack again, but Jacob would not have it. He informed her that he had done his best to keep a positive connection with them, even after they had repeatedly disrespected me, but he couldn't take it any longer. My mother-in-law begged him, but Jacob assured her that this was our home and I was his wife. Anyone that offended me disrespected him as well, and they did not deserve to be in his life. Jacob ended the call with those final words. Since then, he has not spoken with Sarah or his mother. Phil summoned Jacob to speak, and after hearing the entire story, he understood why Jacob had made such a severe move. Phil apologized to me on behalf of his wife, but I informed him that it was not his responsibility. Update 3. It has been an interesting 2 weeks. A lot of people suggested that I install cameras around our house in case my mother-in-law and Sarah wanted to show up and cause a commotion. So I purchased several cameras online and installed them. As luck would have it, they showed up last weekend, banging on my door while I was alone at home. When I saw them through the camera, I quickly called Jacob, who told me he was on his way. I answered the door, and there they were, my mother-in-law and Sarah, both furious. They requested that I let them in, but I refused and told them that if they had anything to say, they could do so from the outside. My mother-in-law began ranting at me, accusing me of being callous, greedy and selfish. I politely informed her that this was our home, and they had no right to enter uninvited. She continued her tirade, unknowing that the cameras were recording every moment. I reminded her of our prior chat, emphasizing that I would not give up our house for Sarah and her family, and that if she had anything else to say, she could wait for Jacob's return. Sarah then began yelling, accusing me of breaking up the family for no reason, being a gold digger and attempting to take her brother away from them. I informed them that everything they said was being recorded and that I would use the footage to obtain a restraining order if necessary. Their eyes widened in surprise as my mother-in-law exclaimed that I wouldn't dare to do that. I smirked and informed her that if they did not leave the property immediately, they would receive a legal notice very soon. This worried them, and Sarah tried to convince me that I was overreacting, saying that it wasn't a big problem. Fortunately, Jacob came at that exact moment. He approached them casually, asking what they were doing. My mother-in-law raced to hug him, but he resisted and forcefully demanded why they had come. Sarah stated that I was attempting to control his life by separating him from them and that they had come to face me. Jacob reiterated that it was his decision to avoid touch, and he did not want anything to do with either of them. My mother-in-law begged for forgiveness, but Jacob merely told them to leave the property or he would call the cops. They were visibly taken aback, apparently not anticipating this reaction from him. Jacob went on to say that if they ever came up at our house again, we would contact the police and have them removed forcibly. They fled, devastated, but Jacob no longer cared. I was relieved that my spouse had finally spoken up for me. Jacob has now spoken with Phil, who was as surprised as we were that my mother-in-law and Sarah had gone behind his back to show up unexpectedly. Phil informed us that we were correct not to let them in and expressed disgust with their behavior. With Jacob being so stern about kicking them out, I doubt they'll dare to return to our property. If they do, I will contact a lawyer right away. I am relieved that my husband has finally learned how toxic his family is, and I hope this is my final update. I'm ready to move on from this circumstance and continue our lives peacefully. My parents are making me give up my baby for adoption. I'm heartbroken and unsure of what to do next. They've left me with no choice. Plus new update. I'm 16 years old. I got pregnant by somebody I work with. He's 18 and is about to graduate high school. He's planning to join the military after he graduates. He's not my boyfriend. We were never in a relationship like that. I mean, I wish he was, but he doesn't seem interested in that. We're friends. He flirts with me. I lost my virginity to him. He didn't force me or anything like that. I've had sex with him multiple times. I'm 15 weeks pregnant now. Everyone knows. Well, not everyone because I'm still hiding it from a lot of people. But he knows, and my parents know. I'm embarrassed by it. I feel like an idiot. Like a joke. Like trash. I just wish I could hide until after the baby's born. I want to never leave my house. My parents are basically forcing me to give the baby up for adoption. I live in a state with heavy abortion restrictions. It's way too late to even get one now. My parents don't believe in abortion either. They told me this is my punishment for getting pregnant, that I deserve to have to deal with being pregnant now. They've decided that I'm giving the baby away and have already set up a meeting with an adoption agency. They say they won't let me ruin my life with a baby, and they aren't going to raise my baby either. So, this is the only other option. My mom keeps saying, "You'll thank us later." I didn't get pregnant on purpose. I don't really want to be a mom right now. I turned 17 over the summer and will only be starting my junior year next year. At the same time, going through pregnancy and giving birth just to give my baby away terrifies me. I don't know if I can live with it. It literally makes me feel like I want to throw up or pass out. I feel like I have no choice but to go along with what my parents want. It's not like I could support myself, let alone me and a baby. I could never just do it on my own. I was too scared to get an abortion earlier on before I told my parents I was pregnant. I was so scared that I'd get in trouble, but now I realize that probably would have been the easiest thing for me. If anyone reading this has given a baby up for adoption and survived it, please let me know what it was like. Do you get over it? Do you really end up feeling like it's the best thing for them and you're able to just live with it? Relevant comments. OP on her parents and raising a baby by herself. I know, and I'm not suggesting that I raise a baby by myself. I know it's not really possible. I would need a lot of help, which is also not possible for me given how my parents feel about it. So at the end of the day, sure, it's my choice, but I'm sort of cornered into only being able to make one choice. OP on the father, and if he knew she's pregnant, he knows I'm pregnant, and he knows my parents are essentially forcing adoption. I think he's relieved that they've decided this and are going to force me into it. I think he feels bad, but at the same time he doesn't want to be a parent, so he says stuff like, "Yeah, that's probably the best thing." OP on if her parents are choosing to take a legal route against the father. I'm in the US. He just turned 18 in April. They don't really want to involve him. I thought they'd confront him in person, demand to speak to his parents and stuff like that. They didn't react like that at all. I mean, they're mad at him and they blame him for this too. But they want to keep him removed from it all probably so nobody will interfere with what they've decided the plan is. IDK. Update: I'm 20 weeks pregnant now and will turn 17 within the next few weeks. My parents are still forcing me to give my baby up for adoption. We've met with an adoption agency. The adoption counselor knows that I don't want to do adoption. She asked to speak with me privately without my parents present to ask me a series of questions. I was honest and told her I didn't want to give my baby away, but I had no other choice. She seems to feel bad about it and told me that I will ultimately have to sign the papers after the baby is born. My parents cannot sign the papers. Unfortunately, without my parents' help, I have no other options. The adoption counselor talked to us about the option of my parents adopting my baby, which I don't really want either. No worries, my parents aren't interested in raising another baby. My parents want me to look at the potential families. I'm trying to look at them. It's so weird thinking that I'm looking at parents for my own baby. I know I'm not ready to be a mom, but it's still so weird. None of this feels like it's happening to me. I've talked to the baby's father. He graduated high school and goes off to basic training later this summer. I think he'd be fine with adoption. He said he doesn't really know what other options we have. We could get married since the military would at least help pay for a place to live and we'd have medical benefits, but I can't get married without parental consent. We don't love each other. What kind of marriage would that be? But it seems like the only realistic solution. I hate the idea of being married at 17 years old and to a person who doesn't genuinely want to be married to me. So then another option which still involves marriage might be for his parents to help out, even take care of the baby and let me see him or her until I'm 18 and don't need my parents' permission to get married. That doesn't really seem fair to them. He could try to object to an adoption, but it's not guaranteed that his wishes would be respected. Plus, then what happens to the baby? His parents seem like good people. I don't know them well, but I've met them. They're worried about what this will do to his future, but they told my parents they believe it should be our decision and that it's their job as parents to help us. My parents basically said it's their job to protect me and that all of the responsibility will fall on me and it'll be my life that's ruined. Our families met to discuss everything, but it was really just parents telling them what was going to happen, and that they and their son had no say. Relevant comments. OP on the ideal adoption situation she would like to see happening to the child. I don't have an ideal adoption situation right now, because I still can't accept adoption. But, probably two gay guys. It's the women in these couples I look at that seem more fake than the men for the most part. Again, I know this sounds terrible to say. Something about a lot of the women is just really rubbing me the wrong way. Maybe two lesbians, because the few lesbian couples I've seen at least seem more genuine than the straight women. Well, in some cases the gay couples could have their own biological children, even if the children didn't share both parents' DNA. But, I'm just more drawn to those couples and the profiles I've seen just seem more genuine. But yes, it feels like nobody is good enough for my baby. I acknowledge that it might not seem rational. If you've never been in the position of having to look at families, all complete strangers, to give your baby to, you probably can't fully understand. I'm allowed to be picky. This could be the biggest, most important decision in my entire life, and this is the only part of the whole adoption thing I actually have much of a say in. I'm only 20 weeks pregnant, not 38. There's no rule stating I have to have a family picked out yet. Some people take longer picking out a new car to buy. It's not as if adoption was a choice I came to on my own and even feel positive about. So yeah, looking at potential adoptive families is going to give me some feelings. As I stated, it's not a matter of thinking I can or cannot provide a better life. It's a totally bizarre and heartbreaking thing to do, to read through the profiles of families to give your baby to. And there are a ton of families. Update: having a boy. I don't know why I'm suddenly getting a ton of responses on my post from a week ago, but I figured I'd post an update because a few things have changed. I had an ultrasound on Friday and found out I'm having a baby boy. He's basically fully formed and just needs to get bigger now. I saw his head and his nose, and they even got a picture of the bottom of his 2 feet together because he was sort of sideways at first and we had to get him to move. It looks sort of like footprints. I could clearly see his little hands and everything. So I already said it in my previous post, but people are still sending my info about abortion. I know those people are trying to help, and I wish I had maybe reached out here when I first found out I was pregnant, since I didn't know I could get pills mailed to my house. I just can't get an abortion now. It's a fully formed baby. I even named him. It won't solve my problem at this point, because my biggest problem with adoption is how I'm going to live with it mentally for the rest of my life. Now that I know it's a baby moving around in there and stuff, I think I would also not mentally be able to handle an abortion now. If it was still just a lump of cells, I'd feel different, but I was too scared to do anything then. After the ultrasound, I sent the baby's father the pics. He wasn't there. My parents don't want him or his family involved now, probably because I told them he offered to marry me and they yelled at me for even considering that. I told him I can't give the baby away and asked if his parents were really serious about helping and if he'd hate me for keeping it. He said he won't hate me. I still think he'll blame me for ruining his life. He already told me he thinks adoption is the best choice. If we got married and he got caught cheating on me, even if I was okay with it, he could get in a lot of trouble. He said, "Why would I cheat on you?" He said he likes me. He wouldn't have sex with me if he didn't like me. He just didn't see the point in us being in a relationship since he was leaving anyway. It was just easier that way. The thing is, I know I'm not the only girl he's been with during that time. I'm not stupid enough to think I'm special to him or he loves me. And we both know it's sort of ridiculous to imagine us being married or acting like adults, but I guess that's what you have to do if you have a baby. I can't really imagine being a wife, but maybe it wouldn't be too bad and I'd get to move away from my parents. He said it's really weird to think about, but I have very few options and he doesn't know what else he's supposed to offer, but he's going to talk to his parents since I'm too shy to. I guess I'm assuming they were just saying it to be nice but are probably happy my parents are making me do the adoption. He says his parents aren't like that. I'm really just an inconvenience to everyone, and if I keep my baby he might end up not liking me too. I don't want to screw up my baby's life. I would do everything I could to be a good mom. I would grow up and learn how to be a wife and mom and an adult. I can't imagine living after giving my baby to somebody else. Also, if you're looking to adopt a baby, please do not message me here. Many people already have and I just delete those messages. It's creepy. If I do put my son up for adoption, it will not be to somebody I met through Reddit. I'm sorry. It's just very creepy to be messaged by adults here who want to adopt my baby. There was a comment full of hard truths left on this update. I feel horrible for you. You're in a terrible position. But your current plan does not make sense, and is not healthy for the baby. You want to marry the father who really doesn't want to be a father, because you'll have access to military housing and benefits. Being a military spouse is incredibly difficult. You will have to go where he goes, which means you will not really have support from his parents, because they will not pack up and follow you every time he is relocated. So no real support from your family or his. It will be difficult for you to build your own career because your jobs will have to be accessible to where he is based out of. He will resent you for pushing for this marriage that you admit is loveless and would be out of convenience. So your plan right now means your baby will grow up with a dad who doesn't want him. A strained and/or distant relationship with grandparents, parents with an unhealthy relationship, and financial hardship. And you will be unable to leave when things inevitably implode in your marriage, because you will not be financially independent, and you will not have any support from your family. My heart breaks for you because you clearly love the little boy already, but it's a really bad idea for everyone involved. At this point, it's one of those things where love means doing what's best for him. And what's best for him is being in a stable environment. Edited to add, because I keep seeing you say you aren't sure how it works in the military, I wanted to throw out there that I do, and that I'm not saying all this because I'm just guessing. My dad was in the Army. My long-term ex was in the Army. My best friend is married to a Marine. My other best friend is married to a man in the Army. And my cousin is in the Air Force. Being a military spouse is difficult no matter what branch you are talking about, and no matter how promising the benefits sound. Most people in healthy, loving, long-term relationships struggle with the hurdles that come in military relationships. Two very young people who don't love each other with a baby and financial hardship? I don't see that working. My parents are forcing me to give my baby up for adoption. I'm getting married and moving in with strangers. I'm 24 weeks pregnant now. I just turned 17. My parents have been trying to force me to give my baby boy up for adoption. I've made several posts about it. I don't want to do it. We've met with the adoption agency and looked at families. I don't think I can survive if I do it. I can't imagine my baby being out there or forever being a nuisance to an adoptive family. They said if I keep the baby, I'll be doing it all on my own. They aren't going to help me in any way. The baby's father's family is willing to help me though. The baby's father isn't my boyfriend. I know that probably sounds bad. We were never officially in a relationship, just friends really. But his parents have been a lot nicer throughout this whole thing. I don't know them well, but I'm getting to know them better now. I'm going to have to, since they are willing to help me, us. They aren't really happy that I'm pregnant, but they believe it should have been my decision about what to do about the pregnancy and eventual baby, and that as parents it's their job to help and support that decision. He's joining the military. His dad is retired military, brother is military. It is what he's always wanted to do. He just started basic training. So the plan is that we're going to get married when his family and I go out there for his graduation. Unless he changes his mind between now and then, which he might. I know he might. He hasn't said that, but I'm just scared he will. There wasn't time to do it before he left. Anyway, his tech school is over a year long, so the baby and I could move out there with him if need be. Or I can stay with his family here until he goes to his permanent duty station. That would allow me to graduate high school instead of getting a general educational development. Or at least finish the next year of high school normally. I need notarized approval to take the general educational development. At 17 and my parents refuse, but they've agreed to sign paperwork to allow me to get married. I don't understand them. I don't understand how they'd rather allow me to get married and go live with another family instead of just allowing me and my baby to live at home until I finish school and turned 18. It makes no sense. I'm not even a parent yet and I wouldn't let my 17-year-old get married. If it was between my 17-year-old getting married and moving across the country or supporting her decision to keep her baby and assisting her with finding resources to enable her to parent, I know which option I'd choose as the parent and it wouldn't be marriage. It hurts so bad. They've essentially said if he's going to marry me and his family is going to help us, then I'm not their problem now, so they'll sign off on that. They yelled at me, called me names, and locked me in my room. I could go back to being the daughter they love if I would just go along with their plan, but these things will never be the same between us again. His parents were the ones who convinced them to approve of the marriage. They met with my parents. Actually, we all met together. They've been the only ones advocating for me at all. They want me to finish school. They're going to help me arrange childcare and I'm going to move in with them before the baby is born. I will take my newborn baby home to their house. I don't even know these people. It's strange and uncomfortable for me, but I'm at the point where I can't be picky about what help is offered. Luckily the baby will be covered by his dad's insurance no matter what, and I will be covered by insurance once we're married. I'm not planning to depend on military benefits to address all our needs. It's just one piece of the puzzle. After I graduate, I plan to get certified for something that has good career prospects and pays well. I'm going to be smart about what field I select, and I will use any opportunity to find grants or scholarships to help pay. My parents want me to go straight to a traditional 4-year college. I'm in honors classes now. I get really good grades. I scored very high on the PSAT. I should go to college, but I'm not really interested in any of the career fields that make college worth it. Financially, in my eyes. Unless I got a huge scholarship, I'd be paying mostly with student loans. So I'm looking into other avenues where I can enter my chosen career field much sooner and start making good money quicker without incurring so much debt. I'm really scared about everything. I've never had to do any adult things. I've blown up my whole life by getting pregnant and not going along with my parents' plan. I don't even feel like I have parents now. I never thought my family would end up this way. I sort of just want to go along with their plan because in many ways it'd be a lot easier. I could go back to my life and still be accepted by my parents and have their love and support again, but my life will never be the same. I think I'd regret taking the easy way out. I don't think adoption would be easy for me at all, but as far as day-to-day life struggles it'd probably help easier. I think I'd grow up and hate myself for doing it, and I'd never be able to undo it. What I'm doing now is the only option that I don't think I'll spend my whole life regretting. At least it won't make me feel like a coward. I still feel sick to my stomach when I think about everything that's happening. That I'm going to live with virtual strangers. That I'm going to get married. That I will eventually move across the country and be a mom and a wife before I can even legally drink alcohol. Although moving across the country doesn't sound too bad right now. I just don't know what I'm doing. I think I'm probably taking on too much, but it still makes me happier than when I thought I'd have no choice but to sign adoption papers. Relevant comments. Maroon Sweater, 123. Setting aside the fact that this nightmare situation should not exist and a shotgun contract marriage is probably not a great solution, OP won't just have access to healthcare and housing. Spouses have access to some education benefits too. Or they did in 2014. God, I'm old. Geez. Honestly hoping this is a military recruiter troll or a pro-abortion troll because this poor fucking kid. Swim Sweater. She'll have access to some education benefits right away, but there are people who prey on those and scam you out of them for utterly useless certificates. My heart breaks for her because she and her baby daddy are going to be miserable. I don't think she realizes how tough it's going to be financially on top of emotionally. I really hope his family helps her sign up for whatever aid they'll qualify for, like women, infants and children, and use the Army Emergency Relief Car Seat Program to get one for free. Creepy. Snow 8166. Unfortunately, there's no optimal solution for OP. Even if she decided to abort, it's too late for her now. I imagine it would be very difficult to go through pregnancy and birth. Then give your own flesh and blood away to strangers. I can't blame her for not choosing that route, but it also sucks that she will need to sacrifice so much, and be in an unwanted marriage and living arrangement, in order to keep her baby. OP has to choose between two shitty choices. I messaged her about a government program that houses pregnant teens and helps them find housing arrangements and educational job opportunities, but since she's been getting a deluge of messages, she probably skipped over mine. In my humble opinion, something like that would have been a great third choice. Cathouse Chicken. I think the saddest thing about something like this is the type of people to talk her out of an abortion are the same type of people that wouldn't want to allocate funds for helping a young single mother. Our anti-abortion policies, coupled with lack of public funds to help new mothers who don't get abortions, really reiterate the purpose of anti-abortion policy, and that's to create a baby pipeline for adopters. My husband is in love with his student, he is a piece of trash, and I have no fucking idea what to do. My husband and I, both 35 years old, met in college. We fell in love and got married 8 years back. I gave birth to our daughter in 2020. My husband is a professor at this med school, he's a doctor himself. My friend Sarah also works in the same college, and she's in the same department as my husband. Few months back in December, Sarah took me out for lunch and told me that she suspected something's going on between my husband and this med student, 25 female. She claimed she'd seen both of them give yearning looks to each other. She said that she's known my husband for so long, and she'd never seen him talk to any other woman like this, that he'd been so aloof around women all these years, but it's just different with this one girl. At that moment, I had laughed at her face. I remember telling her that she's jumping to conclusions based on these supposed yearning looks. That's why I didn't tell you before, she had said. I was confused too. It's not like he goes out of his way to talk to her, but whenever they do talk, it's like watching a slow burn romance movie. She looks at him like he's Brad Pitt and he looks at her the way he used to look at you. I remember the exact words because they sting. Internally I was breaking down, externally I just smiled and told her that she's probably overthinking. That night, I casually mentioned this to my husband. I was laughing at the absurdity, and I expected him to join in and deny the wild possibility that he's in love with a student. But he didn't. Instead he looked at me, all teary-eyed, and said, "I'm sorry. I can't get her out of my mind. I've tried, trust me. I should have told you sooner. But I thought I could save our relationship. I really wanted to." I asked him if he'd cheated on me. He said no. He said he didn't even talk to her. Nor did they have any contact outside of college, and that he completely understood how morally depraved it is to try and pursue a relationship with a student. She wrote him a letter about a year back, confessing her love for him, and he had told her that even though he was into her, nothing would come out of it. Apparently that was when the yearning looks had started. I honestly don't remember how I reacted then. I think I just started packing and came to live with my parents along with my daughter. I've been living with my parents since then. Half of me wanted him to come and beg for forgiveness. But he never did. He comes by sometimes to spend time with our daughter, but that's it. He never talks about the elephant in the room, nor do I bring it up. I keep checking that girl's social media. She's insanely beautiful, almost doll-like, and intelligent. I can't help but think that someone like him should be with someone like her. He's always been very good looking, and I'm more of a plain Jane. She's Meredith to Derek. I don't know what to do. What do I even tell people? I don't even know who I am without him. Some part of me still wants him to come back. Edit. I've decided to talk to him. I know I've been avoiding this for months, but after reading all the responses, I feel it's time I rip that band-aid out. I'm going over to our house. I'll update on what happens. Too long. Didn't read. Husband just admitted that he's in love with this young woman who is also his student. She loves him too. Relevant comments: Moss Valley. So he didn't actually cheat? He has a crush? If I understand that right, he hasn't betrayed you yet. Crushes sometimes happen that don't mean the relationship is over. Get therapy with him. OP answer. I mean, cheating for me isn't just physical. He's had crushes in the past and I've had crushes in the past, but we'd always been upfront and then laughed about it. This one feels like a betrayal because he was attracted to someone for more than a year. This someone gave him a freaking love letter, he told her that he's attracted to her, and not once did he mention it to me. That's a huge breach of trust for me, and I don't think I can look past it. OP answer. Added more about her friend Sarah and what she observed. I know. He said he entirely stopped interacting with her after the letter incident. It does seem absurd, but even my friend Sarah corroborated this. She said he never went out of his way to talk to her before, and then almost entirely stopped talking. Given that Sarah and him are in the same department 24/7, and that she noticed something as small as them giving each other looks, I'm sure she would have noticed anything out of the ordinary. I've had access to his phone and his passwords throughout, and he wasn't texting or calling her either. That's why this feels weird laughing out loud. Update. For those who don't want to read the boring details. In short, I have decided to go ahead with the divorce. Long story. The day I made the post, I met up with Sarah for dinner. I thanked her for telling me about my husband and the student, and also for being such a good friend. I asked her about my husband. She said there's nothing unusual. He's been a bit withdrawn and aloof with everyone lately, but that's about it. Yesterday I went over to my house unannounced. He was there alone in his office. I told him I wanted to talk. He said he'll explain everything. So apparently this woman has had a crush on him for 2 years, her friends ship her with him. She would stare at him during her rotations, and would blush whenever he looked or talked to her. Back then, he didn't think much of it. Many girls have had crushes on him and he always ignored them. About 1.5 years back, they were in the same research group thing. I don't know how this works, but there were 5-6 people along with these two. Because of this they had to spend some time together working, and it was then that he started noticing her. He went into detail about how he was impressed with her intelligence blah 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 and her beauty blah blah blah. The moment he realized that he had a crush on her, he dropped out of the research thing. This was a year ago. Few weeks later she gave him the letter confessing that she has feelings for him. The first thing he told her after reading it was, "You can get into trouble because of this." She didn't care, she wanted an answer. "Is it all in my head?" she had asked, to which he replied with, "It's not just in your head, but nothing can come out of it. I hope you understand." That was the last time they interacted. According to him, the yearning looks Sarah described were more of awkward eye contacts than anything else. He told me that even though he is still attracted to her, he has no intention of pursuing any sort of relationship with her regardless of whether we stay together or not. He said he's willing to change his job and go to therapy. I told him to give me some time to think about it. To sum up. 1. This has been going on for 3 years. Not once did he mention anything to me. 2. The student and him spent a considerable amount of time last year working on the research. 3. He told her he liked her back lol. 4. He's still very much attracted to her, and that's why I've decided to go ahead with a divorce. I don't think I can trust this man again. And a relationship without trust isn't something I am interested in. I've told my parents about it. They're not exactly on board, but they're still supportive. I've also contacted my lawyer about the same. It's going to be a long process, I believe. That's it. I believe this is my last update. Too long. Didn't read. He's still attracted to her. I won't ever trust him again. We're getting a divorce. Relevant comments. Chance. Reason, 6617. It's a crush. He is not in love. OP answer. That doesn't matter. He crossed a line he shouldn't have by telling her he likes her. This is not an exit. Literally. I can't believe these comments. He's gushing about her beauty and intelligence. He told her the feeling was mutual? He could have easily denied it to her and then kept his distance, but he liked the attention. OP answer. I mean, to be fair to him, he wasn't exactly gushing about her. I kept asking and he kept answering. Deal breaker for me was him telling her the feeling is mutual. All but look Lamau these dumbass comments. You too hasty, it's a cruise, chill. Like Stafu, the man literally said, I can't get her out of my head. If he was committed to his wife, he would have changed job proactively. Not wait until now. He let it develop to a point he can't take his mind off of her, and y'all saying it's no big deal. You guys obviously never had a real relationship. OP answer. He said he didn't change his job earlier because, quote, I'm a doctor and there are people counting on me. I couldn't just walk out on them one day. He said he's willing to change his job if that's what it takes to make you stay. New update. For context, my ex-husband is a doctor and he was in love with his student for years. She was into him too and wrote him a love letter, etc. When I confronted him, he told me it was a crush and that he put a stop to it as soon as he could, and that nothing physical ever happened, but the damage was done. You can read the posts on my account if you're interested, but that's the gist. Nothing more there. So I decided to take our daughter and permanently move to my parents' house. We're in the middle of separating now. A lot of people have told me to forgive him, and I've myself debated if I'm taking the correct step or not. But the trust is gone, and I don't think I want to be in a relationship with someone like him. It's taking a lot of strength to do this. I have lost all self-esteem. Fact is that I was always insecure of how my ex was way above my league, about how I was lucky to have him, how people often said he could have done so much better. Over the years my insecurities had disappeared. Now it's all back. He's attracted to someone so beautiful, so incredibly intelligent. And obviously she's also into him. I keep looking at her social media all the time, obsessing over her. There was an Instagram story she uploaded where she was with my ex-husband and a few others, and it felt like someone stabbed me in the heart. He looked happy, and he'd never looked that happy in years. I got tired of being pathetic and even complained to the hospital management about the inappropriate relationship between her and my ex. All I got in response was that they can't take any steps without concrete proof. Now my sad ass wants to snitch about her to her parents. To get her in trouble. To make her suffer. I know this is unhealthy. I'm in therapy, but IDK, I don't think I'm healing. I hate that I have to be sad and heartbroken over that man and he doesn't seem to care. He's stopped coming to visit our daughter too. I wish he would have cared. I wish he would have fought for me. I wish he would have not tossed aside our decade-long relationship for her. I hate this. I hate everything. Relevant comments. Mayor Charles Coulon. If you wanted to go full petty, you could put them to her training program. Medical schools and teaching institutions frown on faculty-learner romantic relationships and consider it an abuse of power. Your husband likely had to formally evaluate her and their affair, even emotional, would tip the fairness of those evals compared to the other students. I have seen married doctors fired for this kind of behavior. Also tell her parents. She sure as shit didn't mind hurting you or your daughter. Don't roll over because of a misplaced sense of loyalty to your D-bag ex. OP answer. I did reach out to her training program. They basically told me that they can only take steps if I have any tangible proof. Which I don't. I asked my friend Sarah, who works in the same department as him, to also complain, but she's not keen on the idea. IDKY. Final comment from OP. I feel like I've already wasted so many years on him. We met when we were 20. I thought I knew him so well, but now it's like I didn't know him at all. I don't understand what's changed. TBH. He's a very good-looking guy. All throughout our relationship there have been many girls who had crushes on him. He used to be so chill about all of it. Never made me feel insecure. Never lost his mind like this. IDK. What's happened honestly? Does the ex FaceTime or contact the daughter? It's a 1-hour flight. He does FaceTime with her daily, but he won't do it if I'm in the room. So he does it when my mom/dad is looking after her. He's not reached out about alone time. He's only said he's waiting for the court orders regarding the custody. He doesn't want to see me at all. We had a big fight after I reported him and that girl to her college, and he said it's not correct for our daughter to see us fighting like that again, so he's not gonna visit. My husband is in love with his student, he is a piece of trash, and I have no fucking idea what to do. New update. My husband is fucking in love with another woman and wants to try polyamory. I feel like I'm the third person in my own story. Hi. I've been married to my hubby for 4 years and we've been together for 12 years. After a lot of financial struggle, we bought a house and we are now planning to get kids. Thing is, a few months ago my husband felt sick and had to stay home for a while. He decided to pick up an online game and started having weekly sessions with a group of players. Among them is a girl, 30 I think. And long story short, he fell in love with her. He broke down crying a month ago and admitted it. He told me it built up so gradually he didn't understand how he felt until it was too late. They started texting privately after meeting and eventually had one-on-one calls together. Then at some point he said, she told him she was in love with him and he realized it was mutual. He said he told her it was impossible but loved her too. They tried to be just friends but they couldn't resist, and continued to show affection for each other. He showed me the texts, but also ventured into sexting. She asked if she could meet him face to face but he refused. So he told me all of this, apologized over and over again and told me he couldn't control himself, and while he loved us both, it was me he would choose no matter what. I was still very upset and slept at a friend's that night to gather my thoughts. I decided to forgive him because he clearly felt guilt and wanted to work it out. I told him that while I was deeply hurt, I still appreciated him coming forward to me and being honest about what happened. We got into long conversations about how we were feeling in our relationship. I accepted he could love someone else but said I didn't like how he handled it. He agreed. And then yesterday he asked if I was comfortable opening up the marriage to polyamory. He said he still wanted to live with me and have kids but can't erase nor ignore the feelings he has for her. He says he wants to do it right and let us both see other people, with clear boundaries and communication, and still be present for one another. I'm gonna be honest, it made me very uncomfortable at first. We have several friends who are poly, I know more or less how it works. But I never really thought about getting into it myself. I am not against it, it just never crossed my mind before. I am trying to think it through but it's a lot to take in. Sorry my writing is probably messy but it's kind of hard to focus. I guess it's too early to decide and we have a lot more to discuss beforehand, but still. Could you guys give me your opinions on this? Thanks a lot. Top comments. Commenter 1, I'd be divorcing so fast. Dog of the bone. So he cheated and now wants to be able to keep cheating by calling it poly, lol. Come on. Do not have kids with this man for the love of God, and if you have any self-respect you'll be serving him divorce papers as soon as possible. Sorry your husband is a cheating ass. Swamp cats. You got married under the assumption you would remain monogamous. He is trying to fundamentally change the nature of your relationship. If I were you, I would drop any attempts at conceiving and figure out your next steps. Personally, I would not stay with someone who desired an open relationship. You need to decide if it's something you're willing to entertain or not. Update 1. Hey guys, first off, sorry I didn't reply to all your comments. I am very thankful for them. They helped me realize hard, but fair truths about the whole situation. I waited for a bit to think about it all and had multiple long discussions with my husband. I wanted to confront him before making a final decision. To answer some of your questions, the other girl wanted to meet him, but they never did. Partly because my husband refused, but honestly, mostly because she lives too far from here. I still got checked for sexually transmitted diseases, though, and I'm clean. Yay. As for our polyamory friends, they apparently were the ones who suggested he go down the polyamory road. I stopped talking to them for now. I'll deal with the bigger problem first. I told him his actions hurt me deeply, and that while I appreciated him admitting his affair, it was still infidelity. I told him what you guys said, that turning it into polyamory was merely greenlighting the affair after the fact. That polyamory should be built on mutual trust and communication, which he already broke. That I didn't feel respected. It destroyed him. He said he already knew, deep down, but didn't want to admit it. Neither to me, nor to himself. We both screamed and cried a lot. He finally admitted he wanted to open the marriage for selfish reasons. He is very sorry. He cut off contact with the other girl, let me fully access his computer and phone, and now wants to go to counseling to repair our relationship and marriage. He has shown me a lot of affection and attention since then, although he admits to himself it's sometimes out of guilt and not just out of pure love. And now I want to make it work too, but am I? Or is it a sunk cost fallacy? I don't know. Our first session is in 2 months, the earliest we could get. And every day I change my mind. Literally yesterday I wanted to leave him, while today I think it's worth giving it a try. Because we've known each other for so long, we understand each other on a very deep level, share a lot of interests, and have already built so much together. He was there for me during hard parts of my life. He took responsibility for his actions, and is really trying. Plus, if I leave him, I'd have to start my life nearly from scratch. Find a new place to live, go back to dating for the first time in 12 years. I don't want to lose everything. It sounds very hard and scary. Am I not too old for this? But at the same time, that's a form of denial, isn't it? It doesn't matter if those years were good. It's not going to be the same. Even if he gains my trust back, even if I forgive him, I'll never forget. I think he is genuinely remorseful. But isn't it too late for that? I am too empathetic. Him being present now doesn't erase what was done. Do I want to stay not because I still believe in this relationship, but because I don't have the strength to ask for a divorce? Because it's the easy choice, some kind of codependency? I have no idea. I can picture both paths clearly, and it's tearing me apart. I am lost, maybe even more than I was when I wrote my previous post. I've lost sleep and appetite, and I'm not sure I enjoy anything in my life anymore. I booked an appointment with a psychologist, for me alone, to help with this whole thing. I am sorry. At this point, I am rambling. I know I am the only one who can decide what's okay and comfortable for me or not. It's ultimately my choice, and my choice only. The emotional hell I am going through just makes thinking about that choice very hard and paralyzing. I'll go to both therapies and try to see what to do from here. I'll try to update, but it's probably going to take a while. I am sorry. I want to thank you again for your support, and I am sending you guys a lot of love. Edit. A couple of infos I should have mentioned but didn't because putting all of that into writing without omitting something is much harder than I thought. He cut off contact with her because once he told him he was married and wanted us both, she just ran away and broke up with him. There are times since then where my husband starts feeling sad or angry because of what's basically withdrawal. And for that he's smart, at least sensible enough not to blame me. What kind of marriage did we have before this crisis? It will sound so naive. It's my first and only romantic relationship. We were very close and basically grew as adults together. We could talk about anything and understand each other. We shared the same values and interests. What changed, I think, is that we got into a routine and he got bored. During our argument he said he was addicted to the attention the girl was giving him and that he felt I didn't show him I was in love with him enough anymore. I told him that even if it was true, he should have told me instead of having an affair. On one hand I have my faults too and I could accept this as one of them. On the other I was taking care of him and the house while he was sick. I don't think he believes it. I don't think he means it. But it makes me wonder whether I was actually a good wife for him. Even though I am not responsible for his actions. Thanks again for your support, y'all. It's a lot to process, but it helps me. So much. Relevant comments OP on if she and her husband have kids and plans on getting counseling. OP. Kids are off the table. If we do go into counseling, and it goes exceptionally well, maybe we'll talk about it. But for now, the distrust is already there. He says I love you, but I never know whether it's to regain my trust, whether he means it or not. Even if he does he love me or is it a lie he tells himself? Dog of the bone. If you choose to stay, don't be surprised if in a year you find him talking to someone again. Cheaters are sneaky. They'll show remorse and swear they've changed. Meanwhile they're smirking inside because they've started a new affair and think they can get away with it this time. OP. Thank you. It's obvious and well known. Once a cheater, always a cheater. But reading it helps me fight denial. I really need to break up with him. If not for myself, just to show him that actions have consequences. Final update. Too long, didn't read, we are divorcing, hooray. Trigger warning, emotional affair, manipulation, self-harm threats, psychological abuse. Hey. I hope you are doing well. A huge amount of things have happened since then. I'll quickly summarize, feel free to check my profile if you want to know more. It was a very, very unpleasant ride. So, my soon-to-be ex-husband had an emotional affair online and tried to make me greenlight it by asking for an open marriage, where we'd be allowed to have side adventures. I refused and his affair partner dumped him. He begged me to try to reconcile with him, to which I agreed, while I was actually trying to prepare my exit. We both went to individual therapy, still am. We separated temporarily 3 times, But every time I came back it went terribly. He was desperate. He kept trying to cross my boundaries. Love bombing me. Playing the victim. Asking to touch me even though I established I didn't want to. Threatening to kill himself if we were to divorce. I could go on and on. This made me finally realize, along with my therapist's help, lot of self-reflection and my exchanges on Reddit, that I was in an abusive relationship. Which is an important part, actually the most important part, of this update. Please look up definitions and examples of abuse, because I had no idea that what my husband had been doing all these years, even before the affair, counted as such. In his case it was psychological abuse, manipulation, gaslighting, guilt tripping, blame shifting, emotional blackmail. Nothing aggressive or mean. Which turned me into a very submissive partner over the years, always catering to his needs while erasing mine. I rationalize everything. It happened subtly and gradually and I was too naive to see it for what it was. His emotional affair and open marriage proposal were the natural continuity of that. Of course, the more I tried to get away from him, the more manipulative he got. Now that I was aware of it, I knew what he was doing. But fighting years of conditioning, even if you recognize it and succeed, is fucking exhausting and disarming. So, earlier today, I brought a friend home to assist me. We sat down, the three of us, and I told my husband we were over and I handed him the papers. It might sound dumb but it's genuinely one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. I was terrified. Yet he agreed. He repeatedly asked me if I was sure. He reminded me of the family we were planning to have and of our best memories together. Was it all for nothing? Apparently, yes. He was heartbroken, clearly mad and frustrated. But still, he agreed. He signed them and went back to his parents for now. We still have to go through the whole procedure, separate our assets, decide what to do with the house and all. And he still wants us to go to marriage counseling. But right now? I feel free. For the first time in months. The last hours have been a mix of tears, celebration and godly, restful sleep. And I have to thank you guys again. Because my first Reddit post was the wake-up call I needed to eventually finally get here. Better late than never. Thank you so much. Lots of love to you all. Relevant comments. Fionest on Oror05. He reminded me of the family we were planning to have and of our best memories together. Was it all for nothing? Apparently yes. He was heartbroken. That's a special kind of asshole. Was it all for nothing? After cheating on his partner. He sounds like an insufferable dickhead honestly. Congrats on your freedom. OP. I know, right? The hypocrisy. The nerves of this man. The worst part is that he appears very charming to everyone who knows him, myself included. Hell, a lot of people from our circle, who are aware of what he did, still think he's a good person who just lost himself for a while. I guess it's hard to accept that the ones we love can be terrible people too. Any decision 470. You have been through a long, hard journey, and it will take a while yet, but you are investing in yourself and your health and happiness. Good for you. Continue self-care, and practice safety and security. Slow down and heal so that you will be strong and ready to seek and recognize true love. Wishing you a joyous future. You can do this. OP. Thank you. I'll do my best. I like to think the hardest part is behind me, but this story taught me to expect the worst. Whatever happens though, from now on, it's me first. I deserve love and happiness and I'll fight for it. My boyfriend. Lied to me about having a vasectomy which got me pregnant. And now I feel disgusted when I touch him. I, female 34, have been in a relationship with Finn, male 47, for a little over a year. I live on my own and he lives on his own, but occasionally I spend the night at his place. Finn is handsome, fit, funny, and charitable. His kindness was what caught my attention. He was just a very thoughtful and kind man and I love that about him. I have struggles with PTSD, so I don't feel comfortable with intimacy until I feel safe and trust that person. Finn said he understood and didn't press it. We didn't start getting intimate until 2 months in, but I was pretty drunk, so I was upset the next morning and he comforted me. He didn't get angry or blame me at all. After that we had a healthy sex life. I was adamant he wears protection every time. Once while we were in the middle of playtime he asked if he could take the condom off. I said no, and he said that it wasn't feeling good to him and he is unable to climax with one on. I said no again. Afterwards he didn't cuddle or hold me like he always did and said nothing to me. I got up to get water and asked if he needed anything and leaned over to kiss his cheek. He shied away from my kiss and muttered, "Oh, now you care about me?" I asked him what that was about and he told me he bends over backwards to make me happy but he didn't get to feel good because I won't let him not wear a condom. I told him I am very worried about pregnancy. I live in a place where abortions are extremely difficult. He said I am on birth control, so what's the issue? I said that's not 100% and he knew it. I grabbed him some water and told him that if he got a vasectomy, we could talk. They are reversible and accessible. I just cannot get pregnant. We didn't discuss it again and he even apologized for being a jerk the very next morning and took me to the spa. I apologized for ruining the night and he said it was alright and we kinda moved on. Everything was great and around the 6-month mark, he said he thinks we are getting serious and that he considers me his partner, and asked about the condoms again. I reminded him of my requirement for that and he said he had to think about it. About 2 months ago he had a work trip that lasted a week and a half and when he returned he was all over me. At the time I was going through a difficult depression. I suffer from depression and sometimes it gets really bad. He seemed annoyed and made a remark that I am punishing him for missing and loving me so much and he held my face and started kissing me again. After the back and forth for a few more minutes I just gave up and we had sex. In the middle of it, he asked if he could take off the condom and I said no, but he said he had the vasectomy. He was so excited to get me in bed he had forgotten to tell me. I stupidly said well, all right then. After that he would forget the condemnation altogether, until my cycle was off. At first I figured it was stress, change in diet, a billion other possible reasons but this nagging feeling came over me and I got tested. Pregnant. He found me crying on his bathroom floor and asked what was wrong so I told him and he smiled and laughed like, "Really? That's amazing, baby?" And left me there and he went whooping through the other room. When he came back he was rattling off so much info. He had a dream about this and now it's happening so it must be a sign. My brain finally caught up and I asked about the vasectomy and he said, "It's not 100%, right? Like condoms and pills." I was puzzled as the only goalie we took out of the equation was condoms. He said it was a miracle and I told him absolutely not. I explained that my best friend lives in a different state and I will be going to visit and also benefit from the reproductive health clinics there. He went silent. He asked me if I really hated him that much and I didn't understand. I said I never want to be pregnant and that he knew this about me. That hasn't changed. He became extremely angry with me saying I wouldn't dare murder his child and that if I loved him, I would never threaten that again. He explained that he will take care of us, he makes plenty of money and, "Don't I treat you like a queen?" So all he is asking is that I have the baby. I said I needed to go and started packing to go home and he followed me repeating things like, "You won't though, right? You won't murder my baby?" And stuff like that. He kept asking where I was going and I said home. I was too tired and emotional right now and I want to go home. He stepped in the doorway and said no and we needed to talk about this. I started to get upset as he was blocking me and I felt trapped. I asked him to move and he said no. I asked him again, "I want to go home," and he said no again. He said, "You are not leaving, what part of that don't you get?" I started crying and grabbed my phone and backed away from him telling him to stay away from me. Finn looked really sad and said I couldn't be serious. He would never hurt me and asked me to stop crying. I demanded he let me leave and he did. He has since been calling and texting me begging me to talk to him. He says I really hurt him by pretending to be scared of him as I know he would never hurt me. He said he treats me like a goddess and I played the helpless victim card and that things like that can ruin a man's life. He then said that I wasn't thinking straight and, "Is your brain lying to you again?" When I have a PTSD or depressive episode I sometimes say my brain is lying to me again, to make it seem less heavy a topic. He has a very community-facing job and I remembered the look on his face when I backed away. I don't want to ruin his life or our relationship. At that moment my emotions were so high that I just reacted. But I wasn't pretending. I sat in my car for God knows how long shaking before I could drive home. I've been ignoring his reaching out but I feel like a coward. Am I? The A. Am I? The A has no consensus bot. OP received mixed reactions. Relevant comments: omeprazole mommy. He literally lied about getting a vasectomy and got you pregnant after you had explicitly set boundaries. OP on if she lied about birth control to her boyfriend. OP answer: I am on the patch. Never lied about that. Update. He broke up with me and called me a murderer. So I made an appointment and got the abortion. It was honestly such a horrible experience but my bestie was with me and the whole staff were so kind and supportive so I am grateful. Thank you to those who encouraged me to get it done. It was awful, but pregnancy and being trapped with him would have been much worse. Finn texted Wednesday and apologized and said he said things he didn't mean, and to please answer my phone as I have been ignoring him. When he called again my bestie recorded it all. Before I could finish hello, he went on a long bit about how amazing I am, how much he loves me, what a great mother he knows I will be, and he will marry me immediately if that's a concern of mine. When I finally got to talk, I said that I am no longer pregnant and I never want to be, and that I was clear about this from the beginning. He asked if it was miscarriage and then said, "Because I know you wouldn't willingly murder our child, right? Say right. It's a miscarriage." I got quiet and he said that it's okay. Miscarriages are not the female's fault, and that we can just try again. I said, "Again? We weren't trying to begin with. I was on BC and he had the vasectomy. And you all guessed it." He laughed and said he lied about the vasectomy so I would give up on condoms, that he long decided I was perfect and he loved me and wanted me to be the mother of his kids. My best friend spoke up and said that was recorded and to leave me alone or she will post it on social media, and he started screaming at us. He then sounded like he was crying and said I was a witch for this. That I am a hateful murderer, and that I broke his heart. He went on to say if I tried to slander him to remember, actions have consequences. He then broke up with me and said he will check back with me in a few days when I am actually alone, and we will talk in person to see if I have come to my senses. He wants us to go to church together Sunday, which is now today, and set a time to pick me up. I said no, but I do have a ring cam, and sure enough he showed up at my door. I watched him note my car was not there, and at my front door, on camera, he texted me asking if I was sleeping around on him and if I let the other man ride you like a wild horse without a condom, and if so he gets a hall pass. He said to come home immediately as we need to come to an understanding of our relationship ASAP. I return home tomorrow and don't know what to do. Edit. Anyone who wants to shame my abortion, I have zero regrets, and actually will advocate for them from now on. But I will happily mock you in the comments. Thanks actually. You reminded me how little an opinion means to me if it's coming from a disrespectful and/or bigoted place. At least I get to laugh through this nightmare. Edit 2. I won't be going home alone any longer. My bestie is coming with me and I have a friend in the city I live with my spare key and he is now in my home watching it for me. Edit 3. Since I've been asked in the comments, this really blew up. So sorry if I don't reply to you all. I am in a safe location with 2 male friends who know the whole story and we are looking into options. I don't want to do anything hasty. A guy friend is at my home and thus far it's been quiet. I will make an update when I know more. Edit 4. No, I will not harm myself the way some of you have messaged me. For those calling themselves pro-life, you sure want me to take my own. Not very pro-life at all. And since we're on the topic, I don't want to get pregnant because I was told by my doctors that I have a high chance of passing away, even before making it to term. The child also has a high rate of mortality during the pregnancy. Essentially, we would both kick the bucket before delivery. I am ineligible for tubals or hysterectomy where I live until I turn 40, especially with my insurance, and I would never be able to afford the out-of-pocket fee. The places even still require a husband's signature as a policy. I would be open to adopting if I ever found the right person, and were settled and ready. Relevant comments. Aquavanatus. This isn't about you getting an abortion. This is about your ex not respecting you enough to attempt baby trapping you into a long-term relationship and/or marriage. He doesn't respect you or your choices. He lied to you about having a vasectomy. He's gaslighting you and trying to control you. You need to bring that recording to the police ASAP and file for a restraining order because your ex won't stop until he's faced with the consequences of his actions. Remain vigilant. Stay safe. OP answer. Thank you, and to everyone who's been telling me this. I am starting to feel less like I am crazy and more like I need to take action and protect myself from this guy. I think I trusted him so much. I would have happily married him. He said he didn't want kids when we met. This is all a lot, but it's helping me understand more and more that I am being played Sandbar Lakers. Everyone's saying get a lawyer ASAP. But she might not even be able to afford one. OP. Is there anyone who can go home with you? I truly have you safe. Keep us posted, and not because this is interesting but because there are those of us who genuinely are concerned and care. OP answer. I can't afford one. I work in the arts and just would never be able to swing the costs I am seeing online. My bestie is returning home with me and I have a friend at home who is house sitting now. Mysterious. Ben 4354. Isn't the thing he did called reproductive violence? Can he be charged with rape for this? If it's possible, you should definitely go to the police and press charges against him. He's such an asshole. OP answer. This has been brought up, but it's the first I've heard of such a thing, so bestie and I are checking. Every state has its own rules, so we will see. Mine is not pro-choice friendly. Professional Zone 168. The part about him wanting you to go to church with him disturbs me. What kind of church is it? Do you think that he's being egged on by fellow church members? Please consider going to stay with a friend for a while. And then maybe with a family member or another friend after that. This dude sounds scary AF, no lie. OP answer. He goes to a megachurch with a coffee shop in it but only on holidays. I told him I did not want to participate and only went with him because he begged for Easter. It was bigger than a 90s shopping mall with a shop and everything. Update 2. I actually forgot about my post, so I apologize. I didn't even realize so many of you messaged me to check in or offer kind words. A lot happened in a short time, but I will try to make it brief. Finn came to my home again, but I was not home. When my ring came, I saw him have a total fit. He was cursing me out, calling me on the phone, and when he got my voicemail he muttered, "I'm going to fucking kill her," over and over again and said it super loud once before walking off. I have been getting a lot of hate mail, texts, and the like calling me a murderer. My Facebook was flooded with these messages as well, and most of the profiles were people who went to Finn's church. So I sent him a text that either the harassment stops or I will post the recordings of him. All of them. The call, his threats, the texts, his voicemails. All of it. He replied, "I have been patient in my love for you, but you are being a brat." And went on to say, that I need to come to my senses and meet with him, because he will no longer spoil me, and, discipline needs to be introduced to our relationship, because actions have consequences. As for the rest I will skip over a bit for the sake of brevity. My bestie said that I should go to the police and we did, but nothing concrete has come of it yet. Something I low-key expected honestly. It's a small little city outside a bigger, more populated one, and the small town vibes can run deep in certain circles. Many of the people go to the church Finn is at, and that includes a lot of the police department. It came to a head last week when I sent some of the recordings to his parents who are on staff at the local megachurch in the area. His mom responded and asked to meet with me, so I went with my bestie to a public spot in the city. When she met with me she was incredibly apologetic and said that his position at the church is terminated. The staff will meet about this and decide on the full measure of consequences as his church family. She told me that she herself had an abortion before Finn was born, and her decision to do so came hugely from the fact that the father was manipulative and abusive, and she was not ready to be a mother even if she had a reliable and loving partner and co-parent. She went on to meet Finn's father and married him and had her children. She told me that she isn't sure if I had an abortion or miscarriage, but either way, I should not be harassed by Christians claiming to be pro-life. I can't explain to you the relief those words gave me considering the vile that was messaged to me. Finn's sister reached out to me via text to share that she does not condone what her brother has been doing, and to reach out if I needed anything. Finn later was arrested for assault. I came to find out, but I don't know who he assaulted or why. Just that he was taken into custody, and as he put me down as his partner, I was called to pick him up as he had been released. The running assumption is that he kept him sober up before releasing him. I didn't. I have since been looking for a new place to live as he knows my address and has come by more than a couple times. I am staying with two of my best friends away from my town, and my home is more or less storage for my things until I find a place to move. All things considered, I am actually really happy. My friends threw me a Yeetus that fetus party and decorated the place with the troll comments from my last post. They made a piñata with scrapped paper with his texts and that of his church pals, and instead of candy it had condoms, small bottle of lube, and paper. That was my last surprise. They pooled together a nice-sized donation to reproductive health clinic near my city, and they pledged hours to volunteer. We are taking a summer trip together to have a hot girl summer kickoff and have many things planned. The two male friends I am staying with check on my house for me and saw Finn there once and made it clear under no uncertain terms that I was protected, and that if he tries to make more trouble that actions have consequences. I have it recorded on my ring cam and it was glorious. Finn sent me a text telling me that I am a cruel witch that ruined his life and broke his heart, all because he loved me, but to not trouble myself with acting, scared of him more because he is leaving the state soon for a new job anyway. He did end the message with, "I have, do, and always will love you, and perhaps one day your cold heart will melt and you can find within it your buried love for me." Like, bro, take the sugar out of your Kool-Aid because I ain't drinking it anymore. Not to say everything is sunshine and roses. I have been in a lot of therapy, and found that I overlooked a lot of red flags and have to unlearn a lot of people's pleasing behaviors to become a more confident and true version of myself. Plus, my friends don't really fully believe he is leaving town, so I am still staying with them for the time being. I love them a lot, but it's like having 4 older siblings fussing about like mother hens. I cannot wait to have my new place. Thanks to you all for the kindness and support. I think this is my last update on the matter, as I don't intend on wasting any more time than I have to on that abusive price of garbage. Remember, You know yourself best and can love yourself best. Life is too short not to make the right choices for yourself, your well-being, and your happiness because you matter. Comments Aquavanatus. I'm glad your ex's mother and sister are on your side. And I'm glad you have friends who are looking out for you and your safety. I know you don't want to, but keep all of the disgusting messages your ex sends you, because now that he's been charged with assault, the next time you file a police report against him, they'll have no choice but to take it seriously. Meanwhile, continue your healing process and I hope you'll have peace soon. I'm glad you're safe. Final update. Sorry, but the phrase is still funny to me. All caught up? Great. So I moved. I took a pay cut and moved to Austin. I can say that now free of worry because Finn? Well, he's in prison. For murder. I know a disjointed rendition of what happened. Finn got drunk out of his mind at a local bar, then shit-talked a retired Marine because the Marine spoke about his wife's abortion. I had since gotten a new job in Austin, Texas, and was moving when I heard. Finn's father asked me to testify to his character and to say my abortion caused this. I obviously didn't. I moved with only the essentials and had a wonderful summer traveling with friends. I just got back last week and am now unpacking my new home. Unrelated, but Austin is a fun freaking city. When I got back and logged on, I saw a lot of you were concerned about my safety, so I wanted to update. I'm totally okay, already have new friends, and am going to adopt possibly the cutest little senior Yorkie. I am literally in the waiting room where they will bring him out after he gets all his medical out of the way. I am also in the virtual queue for an adult Rottweiler and it sounds like I might get her. So I may have her by the time the work week begins. Anyway, I wanted to say thanks to everyone who was supportive, and also I admit to rubbing my happiness in the face of the trolls who wished me misery. I am petty. Sue me. Ciao. Relevant comments, lost. Advertising 232. New and happy beginnings. Cheers, OP answer. It's exciting and the people here are so sweet. For the first time in a long time, I am really looking forward optimistically. Loser swim. I feel like there were a lot of things he did that we don't see. OP probably had a hard time differentiating her post-traumatic stress disorder reactions from normal healthy reactions. He does something cruel and she can't decide if she's seeing his actions as cruel because of post-traumatic stress disorder, or because he is cruel. Prestige. No love. It's weird that people are focusing on the abortion even though he raped her. Like he legit took the condom off with false pretenses, and that's one of the definitions of rape. I'm glad she's safe, but I hate that she got so much hate in the first place. Also, he is talking about how Christian he is, but he wanted a baby out of wedlock. He just wanted to control a woman's body, even though she explicitly said she didn't want kids. Salt pipe. Warner, 89. Also, a lot of people are missing some obvious points about the vasectomy. A lot of heartache could have been avoided here if OP knew that vasectomies don't work that way. He was only able to manipulate her because she didn't know the facts. So in case anyone else is reading for whom this would help, vasectomies are not really reversible. You have to sign a form acknowledging this when you get one. While there is an operation that can attempt a reversal, the success rate is low, and gets lower as time goes by. Vasectomies don't take effect immediately. It can take months until you're sterile, and there is always a follow-up check. It's not a valid form of birth control until after the check. This varies by individual, but vasectomies are generally uncomfortable. It's unlikely that someone who just had one will be up for anything for a little while. Would I be the asshole for telling my boyfriend that him being a Trump supporter gives me the ICK? Hi y'all. New account because I don't really want anybody connecting this with me. I, 20F, started dating my boyfriend, 21M, about 2-ish months ago. We've known each other for approximately 3 years. We weren't initially interested in dating, but it kinda just happened. And things have been really well except for one thing. I found out he's a Trump supporter. Now before you lecture me in the comments about how I shouldn't let politics get in the way of my relationship, please hear me out. It's just been a couple of things that have really rubbed me the wrong way about him for some reason. For context, I am a Hispanic female immigrant, fled from a country where, if I can put it in simplest terms, went to shit, who's had nothing but bad experiences with Trump supporters because almost every single time without fail, they would always say or do something extremely demeaning to myself or my family, talking about how people like us should be deported without even realizing they are referring to us, saying that people like me are a threat to the country, slut-shaming, etc. etc. I consider myself the kind of person who judges a person's character based on what they believe in, and time again, it's been proved to me that these types of people are the type I should stay away from. On the day that Trump got convicted, we started talking about politics, and he told me that he's not really a felon. The courts were unfair, there was bias, and he should have had a fair trial. Not exactly verbatim, but that's pretty much the point he made when I told him that Trump was a felon now. When we were watching The Boys, S4, and that one part where an old man was explaining to Newman that women can reject pregnancies, he agreed with that old man. When I explained to him that that's not how women work, he apologized to me, but I was still absolutely surprised that he didn't even understand such a basic thing about women. He has a sister, so it's not like he grew up without women in his life. We had a conversation about immigration, and he told me that all immigrants should be immediately deported. I told him that myself and my family are immigrants, and if that meant he wanted US to be deported, to which he said, but you guys are legal. I'm talking about the illegal ones. I told him that this type of rhetoric makes me feel unsafe, and the conversation kinda just ended there. When we were having a conversation about the Trump-Epstein relationship, he told me that it was all a conspiracy and that Trump isn't the type of person to do that. I brought up a bunch of examples of Trump being a predator, the pussy grabber stuff, heckling a 10-year-old, the creepy comments about his daughter, the flight logs, making the point that while being guilty by association isn't a thing, the other instances of him being a predator make this seem a lot more plausible. He told me that Trump never did any of that. And in a way, that kinda broke the camel's back for me, because I myself am a victim of sexual assault. And the nasty thought occurred to me that if I ever got assaulted, he probably wouldn't even believe me. That he is standing behind someone I consider a rapist means that he condones Trump's actions, and by extension, the actions of the man who assaulted me. I don't know how he, who grew up with women, and has a girlfriend, who he is fully aware of is Hispanic and an immigrant, has LGBTQ+ friends, and states that he loves people like me and his family, can even stand behind something like that. It makes me wonder if there's a side of him that he hasn't revealed to me yet, because this is a new relationship. And that makes me extremely uncomfortable. I'm asking if I WBTAH for telling him that this gives me the ick, because my own family is telling me that I shouldn't let politics get in the way of my relationship. That Trump wants people to fight each other, and that I shouldn't let Trump win. But I really don't know. Can I get some advice? Relevant comments. Cat Peacematologist, NTA. He may be speaking out of brainwashed ignorance, but even after offering your perspective, he tells you that you're wrong. If you stay with him, you will never stop having to educate this guy, and he doesn't really want to be educated, OP. Yeah, I can agree with that. Every time I invite him to do his own research, he'll always pull up a pro-Trump article and use it as evidence that I'm wrong, or ask me multiple times where I'm getting my resources until I doubt myself. He's been asking me to promise that we wouldn't let our differences in beliefs cause problems in our relationship, and I feel like I'm being babied a bit. It's been really stressing me out. Because aside from that, he's really nice to me. And a lot of my family is excited about meeting him and his family. Breaking up with him after I just announced I was dating him would cause even more problems for me, but the more I think about it, the more I realize that it will probably be for the better. I think I'm okay with carrying through with it. I'll talk to him when I see him later. I'm not really excited about it because we go to the same school. Update. Hey y'all, update here. I didn't really expect my last post to blow up or for people to tell me that this is a justifiable reason for ending a relationship, so thank you for not being judgmental. A lot of people were asking me what country my family came from, so I'll just say it since I don't think that's identifiable information. It's Venezuela. If you don't know what's happening there, then I envy you. Also, shout out to those PPL who thought this was AI generated. I find it kinda sad that this has pretty much become the state of Reddit now. Like, if you think something's AI, just don't engage with it. That's what people who post AI want from you. Don't let them win. Now on to the update. I spent the last couple of days with my dad, who was visiting me, and deleting social media and muting a bunch of politics-related stuff, because I've come to realize that regularly listening to people talk about how people like me ruin the country and how we don't belong here isn't really good for my mental health. And neither is dating someone who openly admits to supporting that group. So I talked to, now ex-BF. I went to his room instead of inviting him to mine, because I knew that if I let him in my room he would just refuse to leave until he convinced me, and I wanted to keep the power of removing myself from the situation at any time. We live in a college dorm. Firstly, I should say that I admitted to him on the day that I made my first post that him supporting a known rapist is hurtful to me, because him tolerating that behavior makes me question if he's tolerant of the POS who assaulted me, and thus, I see him in a different light. And he sent a very long text message just telling me that it hurt his feelings and that he does care about me being SA'd. I didn't really understand though, because he votes for a P***say grabber. It boiled down to, I feel terrible that you see me as the type of person who'd be okay with rape, because I'm not okay with it. I acknowledge that I might have been an AH to say that, So I started that conversation by apologizing to him and then following with me just telling him that I want to end the relationship and going back to being friends. I don't think I meant the friends part though. You can't have your cake and eat it. I can't be your friend if you affiliate yourself with a group of people who regularly shit on me. He tried to convince me to stay by saying that he really loved me and cared about me and respected my opinions. That we shouldn't let politics get in the way of our relationship. I responded that I can't change what he believes and that I value a person's beliefs and the group of people they associate with as a method of how I judge their character. I've already judged him. I don't like what I see, and therefore, I've lost my feelings for him. He told me I was making a generalization. I told him that while it is true that I might be making a generalization, we can't change the fact that in this landscape of politics, many of my rights are in the chopping block, and that I'm already starting to resent him for not really feeling listened to when I try to talk about how anxious it's making me. He told me that none of that stuff is going to happen, and that our different opinions shouldn't get in the way of our relationship. That he's voting for T*ump because he thinks he can fight inflation and cares about military members. I told him that while I can list a million reasons why that isn't true, that isn't relevant to the conversation. He then said that all his other relationships never consisted of talking about politics and that this was ridiculous. I pretty much told him that he can't have his cake and eat it. I can't date someone who associates with people who give me trouble, and that this won't be sustainable. Ending is better for the both of us. I realized that this conversation was going nowhere and decided to just leave. I told him to just give up on it already before leaving. He kept asking me to stay while he thought about what to say, but I didn't. I'm just done. I don't really feel sad. I feel so relieved. I'm going to leave social media for a while and just focus on myself for a while. I'm going to therapy too. I'll stick around to read your comments. IDK how much longer I'll be able to respond though. If I go radio silent, then just take that as a sign that I'm no longer on this app. Have a nice day. Relevant comments, Mame Dennis 1974, NTA. You don't break up with him because he gives you the ick. His support of a racist and homophobic convicted felon does not align with your values. It's not a quirky little thing. Like disagreeing on a choice of music or what team to root for in a game. BDW, he may claim to have all these diverse friends, but I can assure you that they do not consider him their friend with views like this. Anyone in your family's opinion about your relationship does not matter here. They aren't dating him. You are. The fact that you point out to him how you are an immigrant too and that doesn't seem to register at all to him. Honey, he's in a cult. There's no saving him OP. You pretty much summed up my exact thoughts on why his gay friend doesn't want to hang out with him anymore. I found out recently that there's a bit of a rift in their relationship and I didn't even start thinking about why until I learned more about him. Gosh, everyone's burning bridges. Despite being the most experienced, I was overlooked for marketing team lead, and they hired an external candidate, hurting my motivation and self-esteem. Hi everyone. It's been a few months now since this happened, but I can't get past this and I guess I just want to get this off my chest in hopes that it'll help me get over it. Here we go. I've been working at the same company for over 6 years. The company is medium-sized, I would say, and at the time I was hired we didn't have a marketing department. With time the company grew, and after 1 year of working there, they offered to kickstart the marketing department. I accepted. For 2 years, I was the only person in the marketing department. I did everything all by myself. I knew how everything worked. I kept my numbers and quality high, and my manager even asked my boss to give me a bonus for my hard work. As the company grew, the work became too much for just one person, so they gave me a team. We were now 4 in total. I trained and pretty much led the team, but the thing is, my title never went past marketing agent. I thought that with all the things I'm doing, I'd at least get marketing manager by now. I expressed this to my manager, who said that they'll see what can be done. Months passed, my title remained the same, but then in a meeting with my manager one day, they told me that our boss is thinking that there should be a marketing team lead on the team. They said that they think it's going to be me as I started off the department, trained everyone, have the most knowledge, and have been in the company for 6 years now. Obviously, I got excited hearing that and I patiently waited for the boss to finally drop the news to me. The news ended up being that they were looking for a marketing team lead. And they decided to hire externally. I can't even put into words the way I felt. Even now, I still feel like I've been punched in the gut. It feels so unfair and humiliating. I was the first person in the marketing department. I have the most experience. Why would you hire someone with 0 experience instead? I asked my manager why I wasn't considered for it, and their response was basically just, "Boss just couldn't see you being a team lead." Hearing that seriously killed my self-esteem and made me feel even more humiliated. They eventually hired the person to take on the team lead role. And what made me want to slam my head against the wall is that they made me train them on everything I knew. Listen, the new team lead is a nice person and I really don't want to hate them because it's not their fault, but my bitterness is so strong, I just don't even want to interact with them unless I need help. So now, I'm stuck being marketing agent forever, I guess. But what really drove me to write this on Reddit is the new team member. One person on the team left and was replaced with someone else, who just started last month. The team lead is on vacation, so I was the one asked to train the new hire. As I was training them, we talked and I told them a little about myself, about how I started the department and everything. And then they said, "So all that just to not be team lead?" And that honestly just pissed me off. I don't know if it's their wording, their tone or the look of pity on their face that got to me, but I just shut down. I laughed it off, finished up with training and just barely worked the whole day. And the day after that. Even now I feel like my numbers are lower than usual, my quality definitely dropped, but I just can't care anymore. I know I could just quit, but this company's benefits are amazing. And I've made so many friends here that would make leaving so hard. Traveling for work every few months allowed me to see different cities and take in new experiences, but I just can't get past this, and I don't know if I ever will. I might just go through the days until I really just can't do it anymore. If you've read up until this point, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it and I really hope this situation never happens to you. Edit. Hi again, everyone. I just want to thank you all for your advice. You've all been very helpful and you've all given me the confidence to send my resume to other companies for a team lead or manager position. I'll be sending my resume to more as they pop up. The market is terrible right now, but I am pretty confident. Now I just have to act like normal in this current position until I hear from one of them. Wish me luck. For those wondering how I trained the new team lead, I did not teach them everything I knew. Hell no. I taught them enough to do their job, but when it comes to deeper knowledge, I held back. I personally just thought it was the smartest decision for me, as teaching them all I knew wouldn't have benefited me at all. It's up to my company to teach them everything else, not keep relying on me. When I was asked to train the new hire, I did mention that I shouldn't train them if we have a team lead. But boss hit back saying that I would be responsible if the team fell behind if we waited until the team lead got back from vacation. I didn't want to cause stress for the rest of the team and myself, so I, stupidly, complied. I did consider threatening to leave if I didn't get the team lead role, but I held back because I was afraid of the response LOL. I was afraid they would have just let me go and I'd be left unemployed without a backup job, especially considering the job market right now. But I guess my pride also played a part in it. I really wanted to be given the team lead role because they believed in me, wanted to give it to me, not because I threatened them. I also do quite like my job, so I thought I could suck it up, but it's really not worth the mental suffering. Huge thanks again for reading my ramblings. Have a great one, guys. Update, so, I got a job as marketing team lead. Just finished week 3. The market is rough right now, but I'm glad I didn't give up and just kept applying. My new job's a little challenging, but my mental health is in a better place now knowing I could finally, fully let go of that grudge. If you're in a similar situation, don't lose hope. When I gave in my notice, I would pay just to see the look on my boss's face again when I told them I was leaving for a marketing team lead job. They tried to match the salary match, but I declined. They asked what they could do to keep me, but I kept it polite and just said that it was time for me to experience more in a different role now. I could tell they were really pissed, but I couldn't care less LOL. And then apparently they talked smack about me to the manager, that I was betraying them and all that BS. It's so embarrassing LMAO. Of course, before I left, I asked my manager what I needed to improve on to be a better team lead so I can do even better in my new role. I was told things like, be a little more strict, have more confidence, and other things I made sure to write down to work on. And I know it's been months, but I still wanted to ask again why I was passed up the promotion at this company. So apparently it's because they made it so that the team lead did more admin work. More team reports, team evaluations, team decisions and coming up with new procedures, and less marketing. Apparently, since I'm the most senior with consistent results, they didn't want to lose that by making me team lead. So they figured keeping me as a marketing agent was the smartest move for the company. I fully understand their decision, but screw that LMAO. I feel like I'm actually doing what a team lead should be doing in my new company and that's all I really wanted. It just feels like they're still trying to figure out what a team lead should do and I'm not willing to stick around for that again. Thank you again everyone for encouraging me to look for another job. I got way too comfortable in my last job that I allowed them to walk all over me. You aren't handcuffed to a certain company forever, it's okay to leave when you feel there's no more growth for you. Have a great one everyone. I was discriminated against all my life because of my golden child sister. Finally, I got my sweet revenge on my wedding day. I faced discrimination my entire life because of my golden child sister, and she even tried to walk down the aisle at my wedding. Finally, I got my revenge. My parents always favored my sister, and it was far from subtle. If she accused me of something, they'd believe her and punish me. But if I accused her, even with undeniable proof, they'd give her a lighter punishment and find a way to scold me too. My birthday cake always had to be her favorite flavor, and my parents pretend they didn't know I hated it. They always bought her more than me and took us where she wanted, even if it was supposed to be about me. My sister grew up spoiled and used me as a punching bag. At first, she mostly ignored me, but things got worse when we were teens. She ended up with no friends, and her behavior deteriorated. Did her friends move away or ditch her because she was mean? I don't know, because we were never close. My parents boasted about her achievements but never mentioned any issues, whereas they constantly highlighted my flaws as teasing material. I only knew she had no friends because we went to the same school, and I noticed she was no longer with people. Meanwhile, I was fairly popular. My sister realized this and suddenly turned me from an occasional punching bag to someone she needed to take down constantly. She started accusing me and my friends of more things. My parents stopped letting me hang out with anyone, with excuses like, "They're not good people according to your sister," or, "Why are you trying to leave us? Why can't you be like your sister and enjoy family time?" What saved me from complete isolation was my extended family. Most of them lived in the same hometown, and I got along well with my cousins despite some age differences. At one gathering, they invited me to something. I don't remember what, and I sadly replied that I wasn't allowed to go anywhere. When asked why, my kid self bluntly said it was because I wasn't allowed to have friends since my sister didn't have any. This got back to the adults, who apparently tore my parents apart later. I was scolded for lying and grounded for a month, but after that, they gave me some leeway, so it was worth it. My sister changed schools. I guess the humiliation of our extended family knowing her social status was too much, so she demanded to switch, and my parents immediately obliged. Even though it cost them more since the school was further away, she made friends at the new school. However, she never went back to mostly ignoring me. Having felt the power to mess with me and being angry that I told the family she had no friends, she never let me go. My life remained difficult. Her friends would come over and bully me, which my parents called light teasing. I never invited friends over because my parents were awful hosts, or my sister would accuse them of stealing, and my parents would believe her. I did become close to my cousins though, as my parents never dared to treat family that way. Then I got my first boyfriend. I didn't want to bring him home, but my parents insisted. At one point we were separated and he came to find me to tell me my sister was flirting with him. She came over in skimpy clothing, batting her eyelashes, and started telling him how bad I was and how good she was. He was irked and ran off to find me. Of course, my sister told my parents a different story, that my boyfriend had tried to flirt with her, but she naturally refused since she couldn't do that to me. Guess who my parents believed? My boyfriend wasn't perfect, but I immediately believed him for a mean reason. Remember, I was a teen suffering from unfair treatment. I was very resentful and moody and hated my sister as much as she hated me. With that disclaimer out of the way, let's talk about looks. I hadn't mentioned them yet because they weren't relevant. My parents were overweight and liked showing love via food, giving more food, buying treats, etc. My sister was also overweight, whereas I was not. I've always been kind of skinny because punishment often included no treats or snacks. Obviously, weight isn't what matters, personality is. But my sister, even then, was already rude and spoiled. Even her flirting attempts were bad because she never learned to work for anything since she could demand, and my parents would deliver. Added to that, the fact that she didn't look like some sexy model, even my self-conscious teen self didn't believe my boyfriend would try and cheat on me with her. Anyway, my parents prohibited me from dating such a horrible boy. I did try to keep going in secret, but it was hard, and the relationship ended. I did get another boyfriend, but again, my sister accused him of flirting with her when he refused her advances. Again, my parents believed her. I tried pointing out how this happened again, but they decided that I was incapable of making good choices and kept picking bad boyfriends. The relationship couldn't handle the Romeo-Juliet situation and fizzled out again. I would eventually get called a slut in high school as I was fine with making out with boys and such but refused to have relationships. Thankfully, it never got back to my sister or parents. My sister did bring one boyfriend home during all this time. He was paraded with pride, and my parents spent every second telling me how good he was and why I couldn't be like my sister and find myself someone like that. Until he stopped showing up and suddenly he was a conniving bastard that tricked my sister. Oh well, and the unequal treatment continued. At this time, she had more spending money, and her curfews were much better than mine. She was free to go anywhere at any time, while I couldn't. If I pointed it out, my parents would say it's because she's older, but when I reached that age, I still didn't have the same treatment she had. And when I pointed it out, they denied they ever said that or claimed it was because I couldn't be trusted like she was, using my sister's accusations against my boyfriends and friends as proof of my bad judgment. Time goes by, and it's time for my sister to graduate. She was accepted into a college, not a very well-regarded one, and she had no scholarship or anything. Again, because only her achievements were told to me, I don't know which colleges she even tried for, so I can't say how badly she was rejected. I do know her grades were bad in school though, because whenever she got a B, we would celebrate. I would usually get good grades, but my parents refused to celebrate, claiming since I always got those, what was there to celebrate? My parents naturally made a lot of fanfare and told her they'd pay for everything. I was relieved she'd be going away. Not that it made my life any easier. She'd always come home every other weekend and somehow stuff kept missing from my room, or some other issue she'd think of to make my life miserable. My curfews were still strict. Eventually, my mom came to talk to me about my impending graduation. I'm only a year younger than my sister. She told me that since they were paying for my sister's college, they had no money to pay for mine, so it would be better for me to start working immediately after graduation and wait until my sister finished university to see if they could afford something for me. Oh, and if I decided to stay at home, I'd have to pay for all my stuff, part of the bills and rent. I pointed out that I could get student loans. Mom said yes, except no, because they were so caring towards me and I had such bad judgment that they would decide if a college was worth my getting into debt or not. I'm not sure how they'd stop me from getting loans, but I didn't ask. Scholarships weren't mentioned. They had no idea what my grades were anymore and never believed in my capabilities anyway. I didn't bat an eyelid. I simply said okay. My mom clearly didn't expect that and kept prying. Maybe she hoped I'd throw a tantrum so they'd have an excuse to never pay for my college, but I said nothing except that I understood their position, thanked them for caring, and that was that. My dad later tried the same, but I also refused to be emotional. You see, after a whole lifetime of their terrible parenting, I never had any expectations towards my education. I knew they would find an excuse to not pay for mine and make my life miserable. I never believed they would eventually pay if I worked and waited for my sister to graduate. I had been preparing for college for a long time. I could barely go out, my friendships were slim, so I had a lot of time to study. And study I did because I saw college as my only chance to be free. Well, the time came, and I worked my ass off and got a scholarship, not to anywhere like Ivy League or anything like law or medical school, but it was a good enough course in a decent college with a full scholarship. Knowing my sister would hate it and try to stop me via my parents, I put my achievement on social media at the same time I told them, even forcing myself to thank them in the post. Now they couldn't forbid me from going as they'd have to explain to the family why not. Initially, they were even a little proud and boasted about it, and then I guess my sister got to them and they changed gears and even asked me if I was sure I wanted to go. They let slip that my sister wasn't doing well in college, and since she was smarter and had better judgment than me, I'd suffer worse. I obviously stuck to my guns. They weren't happy but couldn't do anything. College was my savior. I started being happy. I still contacted my parents and visited on holidays and such, but since they refused to pay for anything, I could excuse not going a lot due to money. During this time, I avoided introducing any man to them, and my sister stopped going to college. I know she didn't graduate because, again, they'd have made a fanfare about it. She moved back home, paying no bills or rent, but it's different, my parents said, and started working at the same company as my mom, obviously thanks to my mom pulling strings. This was all presented to me as a point of pride. Almost there, I promise. I met my husband around this time. You know those people who say, if I were in that situation, I'd have done something. My husband is the type who actually does. I'm the type who is meek and a doormat in any situation and then can't sleep at night wishing I had done something, had thought of something witty to say, etc. I'm the person who can't help but cry when I'm angry. My husband is the guy who claps back immediately. He loves drama and loves to resolve it. He's the guy that if he doesn't immediately reply to a slight, you better start worrying because he won't forgive and forget, he's just doing something worse for revenge. He's the one who wanted me to post here and wanted to post on a nuclear revenge board too but decided what we did wasn't nuclear. People were baffled that I got together with him, But just because I was incapable of acting like him due to my upbringing, it didn't mean I didn't like it. I love that my husband does what I can't, and he treats people well as long as they do the same to him. When we discussed marriage, we decided we didn't care much about the ceremony due to our budget, as we'd rather spend on a dream trip to Europe for our honeymoon. As for where to do it, since his family was spread out and mine was still mostly concentrated in my hometown, we decided to do it there. We weren't living too far off either, so we could take some long trips during the weekends to manage stuff. Plus, there was some work flexibility, so we could stay in my hometown for a bit too if needed. We sent out the engagement announcement and the save the date for a few months later. At this point, my parents naturally demanded to meet my man. I wanted to grow a spine and refuse, but was having a hard time. The distance had made me think maybe my parents weren't so bad. Well, my husband looked like I had canceled Christmas when I told him I would at least ensure they were never alone with him. See, he had been getting ready for this. He even bought a high-quality recorder he could hide in a pocket to record it all. He was stoked, thinking of all the ways he could refuse my sister's advances, insult her, and then spread the recording of her attempts to my family. So off he went alone and excited to meet them, and came back later euphoric. Babe, you won't believe the awful things they wanted. Babe, we can screw them over so bad. There's so many possibilities. I was confused and wanted to hear the recording, but he smartly told me it was better to listen to him first or else I'd misunderstand him. Well, he went there, and instead of flirting, my parents and my sister sat him down. After some grumbling about not being okay with him, my judgment, etc., they proclaimed they were willing to pay for my wedding on one condition. My sister would walk down the aisle. My parents insisted that my sister would walk down the aisle at my wedding first, in a wedding dress. Their excuse was that it wasn't okay for a younger sister to marry first, so it was only fair if my sister at least had the experience of it, at my venue, with pictures being taken, in the dress, and she'd even have a cake later. My husband will now type his part. Hey, vengeful husband here. Hell hath no fury like a pro-revenge instant karma nuclear revenge lurker when his beloved is scorned. That said, as much as my wife, she's my wife now, paints me as this quick-witted dude, I admit my neurons all but short-circuited when those folks legit suggested that crap like some sort of great gift. Even Troy would rather take in the horse a second time, methinks. Alas, after my brain rebooted, I did have a whole list of insults ready to spew out, but something in my soul whispered in my ear like the devil, string these idiots along. So I said I needed to think, see how my wife, back then fiancée, would react, and then ran out of there before I could give away my nefarious plans. Back to me, the wife. So my husband sincerely recounted how my parents wanted even my wedding to be about my sister, with a grin on his face and the recording to prove it. I was shocked. The distance had softened how badly they treated me, and I thought even they wouldn't go so far. Thankfully, my husband insisting on the angle of revenge helped me not go to a bad headspace. We had a blast thinking up ways to screw them over, from ridiculously outlandish to what we thought was feasible. We then called his much more level-headed brother when we decided on a plan. It involved having 2 venue addresses, giving them the wrong one, etc. Well, the level-headed brother scolded us for it. While he acknowledged he would never be able to convince us to avoid retaliation, he at least showed us that something like that would be hard to pull off. Some of our other ideas were also at risk of getting us sued, so we eventually settled for the most benign plan: act like we agreed, but then hire security and don't let her in. Obviously, if that was all, it wouldn't be pro-revenge. The rest is mostly my husband's doing, but he wants me to do the honors. So here goes. Just important to mention, everything he did was previously discussed with me, and they were our mutual ideas. He went back to my parents, said he probed and thought I wouldn't be down with it. However, he didn't see the issue and, not wanting the family to fall apart, would be down to help them do it. He pointed out that I don't like conflict, so if I was surprised with it, I might not throw a tantrum in front of all the people. On the other hand, marriage is a big thing, so who knew if I'd lash out? Thus, he suggested a compromise. They'd help pay for stuff. This way, I would feel even more pressure to not say anything, as not only would we be public with our families there, but I'd be grateful for the help they gave. He said my parents looked shocked, and my grown sister literally started skipping with joy like a kid, so it was accepted. Importantly, my husband also claimed that due to some bad judgment and past boyfriends, these words were all my idea, and I'm so proud of using their words against them. I was distrustful and controlling and liked to check his phone and stuff to ensure he wasn't cheating on me. As such, it was imperative that nothing of this plan was ever put in writing. For any discussion pertaining to my sister walking down the aisle before me, he'd go over to their house to talk. And so began the months of deception where my parents and sister thought they were tricking me, while my husband and I were milking them. Rather than paying for the wedding, they lay low. Of course, my parents wanted input in everything, including some things that meant a lot to me, like the songs and color palette. My husband would convince them to let it go to keep me in line, but since we never really cared for the ceremony to begin with, everything else was fair game. Or so they thought. Here's what we did. We'd go to check the drink and menu options and then accept the lowest or second lowest priced option. My husband would then secretly take my sister there to try it out and then sigh and say, "It's a pity we don't want to abuse my parents' goodwill, so we won't get the best options." Cue my sister demanding my parents pay for the best. My parents would then tell me not to worry and they'd pay for the most expensive option. The same was done with the photographer and flowers. My husband handed my sister a bouquet of the flowers we wanted and then sadly expressed how I wanted some other tasteless flowers. Cue my parents telling me they wanted us to go with said flowers and they'd pay for it. When it came to the wedding dress, we hit a minor snag. My parents wanted me to use a hideous dress. Okay, it wasn't outright hideous, but it wasn't my style and wouldn't look good on me. We had planned on saying yes and then simply not using it, but my mom sent me a message about it, so there'd be proof I said okay. We had to go with me refusing to text and standing my ground. My husband went over there and said he'd see what he could do. My sister suggested ruining my desired dress so I'd be forced to wear the other one. He pretended to agree. During all this time, they kept communications outside any text. We made sure that happened by having me reply to my sister when she tried messaging my husband. This solidified the uncontrolling and neurotic claims my husband was making, so they believed it and never risked anything in writing. Some people might not like the thought of their partner going around and talking badly about them to family, but I'm such a doormat that the thought of being painted as this controlling and dangerous person is extremely funny to me, and I egged him on to do it. I guess I have a warped sense of humor. Oh, and my sister did try to flirt with him, but he acted conflicted to really sell that he was with them. My husband would pretend to tell them things without my knowledge, but he never told them we hired security. It was really funny. My husband and I, who had sincerely considered a courthouse wedding to focus costs on our honeymoon, ended up having this extravagant, expensive wedding and barely spent a dime. We called it back to pay for emotional damages from my parents. I think my husband, okay, he just confirmed I'm right, was enjoying the whole trick more than planning our wedding. I didn't think it was possible to witness a guy beaming at the thought of wasting his whole Saturday doing a car trip to discuss wedding details with his in-laws, but here we are. Soon the day came. The plan my parents, sister and husband had come up with was to wait until everyone was seated since the bride always comes out late. They'd have my sister arrive at that precise time to avoid me seeing her and trying to stop it, and she'd walk down the aisle. By the time I heard what happened, it would be too late to do anything. As for my dress, we saved some of the leftover fabric from my dress alterations. My husband took that to my parents' place, my sister still lives with them, and showed them as proof he'd ruined the dress, then said he had to go back to me as I was raging and he needed to calm me down. He told them he'd see them at the wedding. We made sure to keep our real security hidden initially. As the guests and my parents arrived, they only saw a woman with a list of names to check. Only after my parents had settled in did we bring out the actual security, a guy who looked like a bodyguard. We instructed him not to let my sister in and promised a generous tip if he kept our instructions confidential. Soon, the moment arrived. My parents got a text that my sister was less than 5 minutes away, so my dad signaled for the ceremony to start. My bridesmaids had been prepped to follow his lead, so they did without checking with me. After they all took their places, my dad stood at the entrance, waiting for me. During this, a friend not in the wedding party texted me to get ready, to avoid suspicion if my husband or bridesmaids started texting. This friend, my husband's ally, was as eager to stir drama as he was and didn't mind not being a bridesmaid. As soon as my dad took his position, the bridal song began. The doors opened and I entered. My dad was shocked to see me. He tried to look behind me but couldn't see the venue entrance from where we were, so he had no idea what had happened to my sister. Then his phone rang. I saw the caller ID, and it was her. He left me with a mumbled, "Something came up." Gasps and confusion filled the room. The friend on the plan loudly asked what happened. I lied and said tearfully, "He told me it wasn't supposed to be me there." My husband and I had agreed that if my dad abandoned me, I should say that to make him look as bad as possible. The tears weren't just acting. I was genuinely hurt and trying not to cry. The friend then loudly asked, "What did he mean by it shouldn't be you?" So that everyone could hear and spread it. Then she said, "I will go and check," and ran off. We planned this so she could create chaos with the security and prevent my dad from returning to stop the ceremony. Eventually, my mom also left. At this point, my husband's dad quickly ran over and took my arm. He'd been forewarned he might need to. His desperate run to me made me smile. I walked down the aisle to whispers as people discussed what had happened. Some left to check as well. When I reached my husband, all was well. He comforted me, joking that my sad face was so real I deserved an Oscar, and reassured me he'd deal with my parents for what they did. We got married without any further issues. My parents didn't come back. I noticed a lot of people leaving and returning during the party, but no one dared tell me what was happening. Someone whispered in my husband's ear and he went out. He returned later with a thunderous expression but whispered to me that he needed to go hide before he broke character and started smiling. It worked. Here's the summary from friends, family, the security guy and my husband that I got afterwards. My sister arrived in a wedding dress. The security refused to let her in as we had agreed. He told her she must be at the wrong venue because there was already a bride. Yes, we tipped him very well as promised. My dad tried threatening him with the police, claiming he'd never heard of him, so he couldn't be working there. The security agreed to call the police since he was hired by us and was just doing his job. My dad realized it would be too late and tried to demand that he let my sister in. At this point, the friend came over, started shouting and insulting my sister, and asking what was going on, basically stalling. My mom soon arrived, followed by others. By then, the wedding plan was ruined. All my parents could do now was damage control, as everyone who learned about it was horrified they'd try to pull it off. People started screaming and berating them. The three naturally said it wasn't a secret and blamed my husband. When he was called over, my husband put on his best confused look and denied everything. To quote him, "Gaslight, gatekeeper, girl boss, LOL." He denied ever agreeing to such a ridiculous plan. When they insisted he demanded proof, and of course, they couldn't provide any. All the text exchanges they could show were about normal wedding decisions. My sister was scream-crying and apparently sat on the floor kicking her legs like a child. My dad looked like he wanted to hit my husband, but security and other people held him back. Naturally, they claimed they had no proof because my husband told them not to text. My husband laughed and said, "Wow, how convenient, huh?" Then he repeated, "Why would I ever agree to something so messed up?" He ripped into them about being terrible parents and said he wasn't going to let their stupid plans and lies ruin his wedding, then went back to me. No one believed them. The venue had cameras, but they wouldn't show me the recording as it was only for security purposes. However, some people filmed parts of it. Watching my parents and sister get torn apart by everyone who came out to see the drama was delightful. After years of being accused of things and not being believed, seeing them get a taste of their own medicine was one of the best wedding gifts. My mother was crying, my dad kept changing from purple to white, and my sister was still on the floor crying and screaming. They kept insisting that my husband was in on it, but people kept asking why he would agree, why there was no proof, and why they wanted my sister to do this at my wedding. They had no good answers. Eventually, they were told to leave and had no choice but to do so. My dad apparently had to drag my sister up as she refused to leave the ground. Again, people said nothing to me all night. I guess they wanted to spare me, and maybe it's because I was the bride and not just a guest for once, but it did feel like everyone was making an extra effort to be nice, positive, and excited about everything. My husband says all the expensive food and drinks they were eating certainly helped, LOL. We had a blast. My husband kept up the forced angry face for only a short while before breaking out in smiles again. After that, we went to the hotel to catch some sleep before heading off on our honeymoon. Speaking of which, my parents did try to pay for our plane tickets, but we thought that was risky as they could try to cancel them or something, so we refused. Since then the three of them have tried to contact me. I've refused calls because my husband insisted on keeping a paper trail, a smart move because my sister eventually messaged me. I won't repeat what she said as it was very unhinged and didn't make much sense, but the important part was that she blamed me for her humiliation. Called my husband a two-faced snake who fooled them for months, he wants to print and hang that on our wall, LOL, and hoped, but was also certain, that I'd get cheated on by him. She even suggested he was cheating on me with her. My husband took my phone, screenshot the call logs, my sister's messages and some messages from my parents demanding I pick up the phone, and sent it all to our family group chat. He also sent screenshots of messages to him where they called him names and threatened him, but he kept up the "you're delusional, I never agreed to anything" shtick and even threatened to sue them for defamation and harassment. He wrote a message in the group chat begging my family for help as I was now being harassed by them constantly. He pleaded with them to stop my parents and sister from ruining our honeymoon after they failed to ruin our wedding. He ended with a request that they not share our locations to prevent my parents from sending my sister over and claiming he had somehow agreed to pretend to sleep with her in our honeymoon suite. LOL. My family assured him they'd handle it, and since then, we've had peace. My husband is a bit disappointed that my sister didn't disobey so he could call her out again while tearing her a new one. We'll see if the peace lasts. All in all, while I would have preferred a normal, loving family at my wedding, at least for once in my life they not only failed to ruin something meaningful to me, but I got back at them. Extra info: do I know why they treat me like this? I've been asked this question a lot, so I assume you all will wonder the same. I've pondered this all my life and still don't know. I tried asking when I was young, but they denied any difference and scolded me for being spoiled, so I stopped trying. I've considered many possibilities, but based on my observations I think it's this. I was unplanned. They took a while to have my sister, so she was not only wanted but also like a miracle child after so long. However, given our small age difference, I think they didn't expect to have another child so soon or easily and didn't use adequate protection after my sister's birth. Maybe they didn't realize my mom was pregnant until it was too late, so they were saddled with an unplanned baby while still dealing with a newborn. They're not well off, so having the extra expense likely didn't help, and they resented me. But that's just my conjecture. Regardless, I've accepted that the reason won't truly matter. What they did to me was unwarranted, no matter what. Did they really think this would work? My husband and I have a theory that they never intended to do this at all. We think my sister threw a tantrum over me getting married first when she barely gets dates, and they made my husband that outlandish proposition. They didn't want to pay for my wedding and didn't think we'd accept or that it would even look good for them to do it. By suggesting it and being refused, they could look like the good guys to my sister while having an excuse not to give me a dime. But then my husband accepted it and they couldn't backtrack without risking my sister turning on them.